morning, everyone. Welcome to the regular session of the Yuma County Board of Supervisors. We'll also be sitting as all special taxing districts, and this is December the 7th, 2020 meeting. It's 9 a.m. And the first item in the agenda for us to do is the Pledge of Allegiance. Will everybody please stand up? Supervisor McLeod, would you lead us in Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are we running behind, or is there something going on that channel?
Getting some feedback or something.
Are we? Is it running live, or is it? Oh, there you go. Yeah, well, it looks nice. I mean, they're looking for toilet paper. They're looking for toilet paper.
Okay.
Which, again, always perplexes me. All right, so the first item in the agenda is call to the public. Call to the public is held for the public's benefit to allow individuals to address issues within the board's jurisdiction. Board members may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to criticism, or scheduling the matter for further discussion and a decision at a future date. Anyone who's concerned about COVID-19 does not want to be put into an open setting can submit an email, a call to the public statement at publiccomment@yumacountyaz.gov. This email forms of public comment will be accepted until 8 a.m. the morning of the meeting. All public comments will be read aloud during the Yuma County Board of Supervisors meeting that starts at 9 a.m. Do we have any email comments? Right, thank you, Desiree. We're then moving on to the next item, which is presentations, proclamations, and appointments. During this segment of the agenda, board members may discuss the presentations and proclamations and may announce appointments to the Yuma County Planning and Zoning Commission and the Yuma County Board of Adjustment. No legal action will be taken. I've been made aware that there's an appointment to be made. Supervisor Simmons has an appointment to make.
Yes, I'd like to, want to reappoint Danny Bryant to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Why?
Are you crazy?
Just kidding, I know that.
Hey, he's been doing good over there.
I don't know, I had some mixed feelings. Anyway, so it's your appointment, so you get to suffer with it. All right, that's good, it's good. The next item in the agenda, or the item within this segment, is a presentation of the county line by Yuma 77, the Yuma County Government Channel. Are we going to be able to see it? Seems like they may be having some technical.
Saliva testing continues as COVID-19 cases rise. Yuma County Superior Court is moving towards a treatment-based approach to help those suffering from mental illness. And do you know what to do with your live Christmas tree after the holidays? These stories and more, this is your County Line. It's no secret COVID is on the rise in the United States again, and it's no different in Yuma County. Many people are looking for opportunities to get tested, and many showed up recently to participate in saliva testing developed by ASU. Partnering with ASU, the Division of Emergency Management, along with the Kokopah Tribe, the third saliva testing event was recently held.
DEMA, Department of Emergency and Military Affairs, National Guard is down here, so a lot of agencies come together. Not very easy to get together, but when there's a need in the community, we come together to help them fix that.
Saliva testing produced by the biomedical research team at ASU is one reason for a great turnout. Many people don't feel comfortable with the swab technique. Collecting saliva in a tiny vial provides relief to those who are scared to swab.
And it allows us to just have access to information, right? We don't know if we can become asymptomatic carriers, and the test is so easy and fast. It's just a little tiny vial, so being able to just get the information and have peace of mind, it's worth spending Saturday morning here.
Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or you can sign up for all the latest news by visiting our COVID update page at yumacountyaz.gov. Important announcements and information straight to your email and mobile devices, and you'll be one of the first to know about more testing in the future. And please don't forget flu shots at the Health District. Health professionals are recommending flu shots this season, especially because of COVID. Many people who have never received a flu shot are doing so this year. A flu shot certainly protects yourself and protects those around you. It goes a long way in maintaining our health care locally. If you want to become part of the fight against flu in Yuma County, be sure to visit yumacountyaz.gov. You can arrange for an appointment for a flu shot Monday through Thursday. Across the nation, the large number of individuals with mental illnesses entering the court system has made the judicial system in the country take a serious look at how to help. Traditional jail settings are not usually adequately equipped to handle the needs of the mentally ill. Like many other areas, the Yuma County Superior Courts have been using a specialty court program called Mental Health Court. It's a program that gives certain qualifying individuals the chance to enter alternate treatment and sentencing programs. The idea is by moving from incarceration to a treatment-based approach, expensive jail beds free up, and it lets a person progress towards a healthy reentry to the community.
The program's roughly 16 to 18 months. However, as they do well, it can be less. We only want to have them in our program as they need us. And the other program is the deferred, so they're not on probation. It's a deferred adjudication.
In order to successfully complete the program, offenders must meet the goals set by the court. By the end of the program, the successful graduate has the skills necessary to remain a healthy, law-abiding member of the community.
What we see as success is we see them not getting rearrested when they're in our program. They're reconnecting with their family. They feel like they have purpose again. They're stable on their meds. They at times can find employment when they're able to. So we feel this program is extremely effective.
If you'd like to know more, contact Kathy Dreyer, the Yuma County Mental Health Court Coordinator, at 817-4045. Most everyone is gearing up for the holiday season, and it's probably a good guess that you have a Christmas tree. But have you thought about what you're going to do with your live tree after the holidays? The Yuma County Public Works Department has teamed up with the City of Yuma to give you a chance to help preserve the West Wetlands Project. All you have to do is take your tree to a recycling location, and they'll do the rest.
It's important because, they don't become a fire hazard. As we know, they burn up pretty quick, and also they don't end up in the desert. And plus, we recycle them because they use it as mulch.
You can recycle your tree by taking it to the following location: the North Gila Valley Transfer Site on Saturday, December 26th through Sunday, January 31st, from 7 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., 7 days a week.
Hi, my name is Mary, and this is your Health Watch. The holiday season is an exciting time of the year when many families gather to celebrate and enjoy traditional festivities. To ensure a safe holiday season, the Arizona Department of Health Services and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention remind everyone to take safety measures and practice safe choices, all the while enjoying family and friends. Weather permitting, celebrate in the open air outside in your yard or at a local park. Wear a mask if gatherings include guests from outside your household. Minimize the number of guests or celebrate together using virtual platforms to bring family and friends together without exposing one another. Wash hands often with soap and water before preparing, serving, and eating food. Use single-use options such as plastic utensils. And remember to clean and disinfect frequently touched surfaces and items between uses. For further information and guidelines, please visit cdc.gov and adhs.gov or reach Public Health Services District at 928-317-4550. This is all for now. Until next time, stay healthy, Yuma.
During this holiday season, right in the middle of COVID fatigue, we think we've found a great way to put you in the holiday spirit. While there are many programs that do the same, we stumbled across a very special tree in the lobby. The Salvation Army Angel Tree program helps children from low-income families, children ages from infant to 12, and seniors who are 60 and older benefit from this program. Individuals take one of the cards filled out by a child or senior describing their wish. The individual can buy some or all of the wishes listed for the child on the card. COVID has hurt many people on many levels. For many, it has impacted finances badly. This year more than ever, your kindness and understanding can make an enormous difference in someone's life. So if you want to feel the holiday spirit, seeking a program like the Angel Tree program could very well be what you need, and what a young person or senior may need too. Before we go, a quick reminder about our schedule for the holidays. You'll want to remember that your county government offices will be closed for both Friday, December 25th and Friday, January 1st, so county employees can enjoy the holidays with their families. We'd like to thank you for joining us for this County Line. If you'd like to watch past episodes, log on to yumacountyaz.gov/VOD. And remember, you can join us live on Facebook. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. And we'll go back to our regular schedule, that was part of our regular schedule, I shouldn't have said that. But anyway, the next item in the agenda, sure?
We're still in call to the public.
Yes.
Yeah, I just neglected to mention at the beginning of the meeting that it is Pearl Harbor Day, and we need to remember those who fought, men and women who fought for our freedom in World War II. And so I didn't want to let the meeting get past without mentioning that. Also, I went down and did that saliva test. It's really easy if you ever have an opportunity to do it. You know, we need healthy people going too. So please take an opportunity to sign up when they come around again. We were there 10, 15 minutes maybe. So it went very well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for those comments. And we'll go to item number 2, which is introductions and comments by Kimberly Call, Executive Director of the Yuma County Chamber of Commerce. Kimberly?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I know I've had the opportunity to meet a couple of you, but it's great to be here to actually get to see everybody in person today. So I'm sure most of you know I replaced John Curtis a few months ago at the Yuma County Chamber of Commerce. We've been extremely busy, even though we haven't been able to have events clearly due to COVID. But before I do anything else, our latest program has been working with restaurants. As many of you probably know, Governor Ducey announced a $1 million plan for restaurants to extend their premises. Each restaurant is eligible for up to $10,000. And we ran into something last week where they had to have an approved application to extend their premises by the local government. And so any restaurant in unincorporated Yuma County needed to have an approved application before they could apply for that $10,000 grant today. And I called Susan on Thursday in kind of a panic saying, okay, what do we do for our restaurants in Yuma County? And I just want to say thank you so much it was an immediate response. We already had the emergency proclamation by Saturday. I spoke with several restaurants over the weekend and actually already have them this morning looking for the application so they can apply for the grant so they can extend their premises. So thank you so much for helping us out with that so quickly and making sure that we were on top of that so that local restaurants can get that assistance. Other than that, our big things right now, we're doing our golf tournament this Saturday. It's replacing our expo because clearly due to COVID, we can't have an expo, but we are moving the expo out to the golf course. We actually are going to have booths like on the tee boxes and at the driving range, and so that the golfers, as they go through, can visit the local businesses and see what they have going on. And we're doing a couple of drives, kind of like, you know, the holidays, especially this year with COVID, have hit a lot of people hard. This year has hit military families especially hard. I actually met with the military spouses about a month ago, a group of them, and military spouses unemployment is running at about 32% right now due to COVID, which is huge. And as we all know, our military members, especially the enlisted men and women, don't make a lot of money. So we are again doing our Walmart fundraiser where we're going to give $100 gift cards to local military families stationed at either YPG or MCAS Yuma. And then for the first time, the chamber is actually a Toys for Tots location. And we've been doing at what events we have had, like the golf tournament this weekend, we're actually doing raffles so that people that bring a toy, that's their entry into the raffle. And then we're providing some sort of a raffle prize. Actually, this week it's a $50 gift card that was donated to us by Fry's so that we could get more Toys for Tots. Other than that, just trying to keep going. We are doing a partnership with Arizona Retail Works to try to bring more people into the retail sector and trying to keep the retail sector as open as we possibly can, and just doing our best to make sure that the businesses in Yuma County are successful. Any questions?
No, thank you. I hope the businesses have an opportunity to use it. I mean, the way that our caseload is going up, or the numbers are going up, it may end up even in more dire straits than we are right now. So anything we can do to help them out, we'd be glad to do it. I mean, Susan called. By the time she called, she already had that proclamation ready. All I had to do is come over and sign it. So, you know.
And I need to give credit to the county attorney's office for making that proclamation.
Quickly.
Yes, I mean, thank you. That's, I, you know, come from a background up in the valley, and have been working with the federal government, and this was the fastest I've ever seen something like this move. So I have to tell you that I am very appreciative. I actually, as soon as I had the email from Susan on Saturday, reached out to our restaurants, actually spoke with several of them already on Saturday, and we'll be working with them so that they can apply for that grant. So again, thank you so much.
All right,
Welcome to Yuma County.
Welcome to
Thank
Yuma
you.
County.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's reasons I wanted to move here. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you for making that happen, Susan.
Yes.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the consent calendar, and the following items listed under the consent agenda will be considered as a group and acted upon by one motion with no separate discussion unless a board member so requests. In that event, the item will be removed from the consent calendar for a separate discussion. Anybody wants to pull any of the items?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull number 15.
Number 15. Okay, and I'd like to pull the item, where is it? 9, item number 9. 9 and 15. Anything else? Any other item? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to approve consent calendars item 1 through 16 with the exception of 15 and 9.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the items as presented, as listed. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Then I'll go ahead and move to, open item number 9, which is an item that has been in front of us a couple of times now. This is the second time, and I just want to hear what's going on. Authorize the sheriff to purchase from Santan Ford 2021 Ford F-150 4x4s with 2.7 twin turbocharged gasoline engine trucks based on the proposal submitted in an amount not to exceed $599,188.50. And additionally, if the sheriff is unable to negotiate with the most qualified bidder, authorize the sheriff to reject all bids and purchase the vehicles with the state contract. What brought this back up? It didn't work? It didn't meet muster?
Correct. The county attorney's office got together and looked at our policies as well as state law and indicated that they could not select someone who is not the lowest bidder because they were local. So that there's not a provision for a local preference in state law. So we need to go back to the lowest bidder, which was Santan, which was brought forward to the board initially.
Now, why? Well, go ahead. Go ahead, Supervisor Franklin.
Mr. Chair, I at our legislative meeting for the Chamber of Commerce this last Friday, I brought that up to our legislators because we talked to our state legislators at that meeting, and I brought this up to several of them and asked them if they would consider putting in possible legislation that would allow us to do local if it doesn't exceed a certain amount of difference between well, usually Maricopa County as compared to being able to do Yuma County, because as on this issue, as Russell brought up, we would have made up the difference between the bid from Santan and the bid from Alexander by local sales tax and vehicle taxes. And so if we could,
Is it?
we need to have
Yeah, well,
something in there
okay, well,
that
maybe
would
the
allow
question
that.
should
So
be.
I just wanted to let you know that I'm working
Something's
on
on the
that.
work. All right, I guess, Sheriff, you're aware that legal had a problem with us going to the local bidder. I was under the impression we had a 5% or some sort of percentage leeway to work in this. Maybe I was confused with the city. Is that the case? The city does have one? Because I thought we had one, and I know we run by state statute, and it's pretty specific about some of these things. But I feel that to be incredibly, well, in terms of incredibly, the word that I'm trying to find to describe a situation where you're trying to be as helpful as possible, especially in this kind of situation. Maybe an emergency proclamation would do it, since we're in an emergency or something. I'm trying to figure out a way to help the local businesses. And
I tried that.
you tried that?
I tried that, Supervisor Reyes, yeah. And the wording in the statute's pretty clear. There's just no way around it.
Mr. Chair.
I thought we'd done it once. I don't, maybe I'm just getting old and remembering things that didn't happen, but.
I know the cities, sometimes instead of a request for proposal, they do a request for qualifications. So with qualifications, that's something that maybe a local bidder has more than outside bidders, and I think we can go around that.
Well,
so something for legal and Susan to look into.
Right. I don't know if the county attorney's office wants to comment on any of that right now, but I'll allow you to do
that. This is something that came up about 6 or 7 years ago, so we already had an opinion on file. We reviewed that opinion, and the law has not changed. So if you put something out for bid, you have to go with the low bidder.
I know the law probably hasn't changed. What's changed is the situation. And unfortunately, we don't seem to be able to adapt. I thought that the emergency declaration allowed me to sort of waive some of the normal requirements of law. But how did you find out?
I contacted Mr. Kirkus at the county attorney's office and went over it. I did try the emergency declaration route, but he was quite sure it would not pass muster because in the statute, it describes what the circumstances are. And basically the circumstances would be where a sudden event happened and the sheriff, his vehicles were disabled and they say a flood and they were caught in a flood, and that, then we could just go straight over and purchase. But we're not in that type of an emergency where it just doesn't fit. It's trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and it just won't work. I tried in every avenue that I could think of, but it won't pass the county attorney's office.
Anything?
Mr. Chair, members of the board. Obviously, we've gone through quite a big process trying to get where we're at today. In the past, we have, where the board has made a decision, but the difference was like $3,000. So we made that up because typically we have to use our volunteers to drive up, pick them all up, and bring all those vehicles back to Yuma. That passed muster in a way, and that was many years ago. Obviously, we have to be good stewards to the community, and we always look at local as preference in everything that we do. There are certain circumstances where, like you're referring to, Supervisor Porches, that if there's a specific item that's only available from that specific vendor, then we can go that route. Unfortunately, with this situation, the $1,000 difference that we had obviously is through Santan, and they are a state contract, which we have to be cognizant of taxpayer funds and spending them wisely. So that's where we're at today in regards to that.
So what does that mean that they're in the state contract? Does it mean that they're pre-approved as a provider, and that will we pay taxes anyway?
dealerships have the ability to go out to be able to do state contracts. So even our local dealerships can actually apply to be the state contract entity, where they would actually be able to get those vehicles and then have them brought here and then be able to sell those vehicles throughout the state. So each individual business has that ability to be the holder of the state contract. So
And
state
Santa Ana holds it.
contract is a lower price, which we're able to get, and we've used in the past. We've gone through the RFP process, as some of the supervisors here are aware, which it takes like 3 months to go through all that. It takes an astronomical amount of time to do that process, but in that event, typically the state contract still wins out. We have had a few occasions where it's been under from certain vendors and it's worked out, but this time it did not.
So in other words, if there was a way to justify purchasing local, it would have to be something where the actual price would fall within the range of being the lowest. In other words, the additional expense will bring the price or bring the lowest price up and making the local purchase something justifiable.
And it's incumbent upon those entities where we ask for a quote, no matter what it is, to put pen to paper and do their research as well.
It's only $1,000 per vehicle difference.
Mm-hmm.
Really a shame.
You should have asked for individual bids. No, I'm just kidding.
Those two have been looked at as far as state procurement laws, and there are certain things that you can and cannot do when it comes to
Yeah, I know. It's
purchases versus a bulk purchase.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I find that the fact that county governments runs totally by statute, it's one of those situations where there's very little wiggle room to be able to justify, an $18,000 difference as something that we could make up locally. So I guess the only avenue we have is to learn from the fact that things like this can happen, and before they happen, have a legislative solution available and ready for us. We didn't think of that, but I know the city of Yuma, I think, and some of the local cities and towns have a local preference percentage wise or something, 3%, 5%, whatever that is, that allows them to sort of get to a point where they can actually benefit the local economy as opposed to benefiting someone from Phoenix or from wherever.
Maricopa County.
It's a shame because at this time with the difficulty they have, and I'm not saying that they're running into a rough time, but every business house is running into a tough time. We like to try to, as much as possible, accommodate as much as possible the ability that we have to sort of purchase locally. But in this particular case, I guess legal hasn't been able to give us a way, and the feeling is we get into more trouble. We'd have to defend it, and it would cost us more time and effort to try to do it than it is to go the legislative route and see if we can fix that problem in the future.
Yeah.
So thanks for the effort, and I want to thank the rest of the supervisors for coming around so quickly in terms of how, trying to help the local economy by keeping that purchase here. It's a sizable purchase, but we can't go against legal, or we could, but it wouldn't.
We're open.
He's here right now.
Let's try it.
We'll talk about it as soon as he gets out. No, I'm just
It
kidding.
would cost the,
No,
yeah,
we're
it
gonna
would
have-
cost the county quite a bit.
We're gonna have to
yes.
follow the recommendation, grudgingly, but we'll have to follow the recommendation, and I hope the local dealer understands the process that he needs to go to make it himself much more accessible to a situation that we may be able to work out in his favor, because we would have if we could have.
Yeah.
All right.
Chair, members of the board, and I appreciate that. I understand where the cities have the local preference and they're able to do that under their city charters, correct. And then Supervisor Pancrezi, you were saying Maricopa County is able to do that?
No, but
Oh, okay.
everything always ends up at Maricopa County. Their volume is
Great
a lot.
state,
Yeah,
yes.
the great state, yes.
All right,
So,
well,
yeah,
I think,
Thank you for.
well, we gave it a shot, and I
3%,
hope,
5%.
I hope we
yeah.
can do better next time, but at this particular time, that's all we can do. I'll entertain a motion to approve the item as presented.
So moved.
So move. Second.
Been a motion and second to approve the item as presented. Thank you for coming over and letting us know the details of some of these situations, okay? Any more discussion on the item? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
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 Well, I'm not gonna vote even aye, but, you know,
If you don't vote, it is an aye.
I know, it's an aye, it's a grudgingly aye, it's like a Mexican aye, it's like a expression of pain. Well, anyway, we're gonna have to move on. We'll move on to item number 15, Public Works, and it's authorize the Public Works Director to purchase one air curtain burner. When I saw air curtain, I thought it was like a plane or something, and then I read burner, and then I said, oh, well. S 2020 as approved in the adopted budget, manufactured by Air Burners Incorporated, sole source purchase in the amount of $132,257.40. This is basically what Supervisor Portia was referring to. It's a sole source purchase, and then authorize the Public Works Director to execute all contract documentation contingent upon review by legal counsel. Floor is yours.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Josh Scott, Public Works Director.
Thank you for being here, Josh. What are we currently doing? I know we grind it. Does it go to the landfill?
No, so we currently grind, and we have an agreement with Sunset Nursery.
Okay.
They take the chippings and they mulch it. The issue is they don't have the capacity to accept all of our green waste, so we end up piling it up on site or taking it to the landfill when we get overwhelmed. And then that assumes that our green waste grinder is up and operating as well.
So we start burning it all, they lose their source of mulch, because that's what I thought. Do they buy it?
No, it's we don't make any money off of it. We don't charge them anything. There's no money that changes hands. It's just to keep it out of the landfill.
Right.
Prior to our agreement with Sunset, we were taking it to Blue Sky, and then they had that fire 4 or 5 years ago now. So we needed to find an alternative at that point.
Oh, we contributed to that, huh? I didn't know that.
You opened this up.
Oh, boy. Now we're going down a rabbit hole.
So and the bottom line is, you're not really taking that source of mulch from them. You're just simply saying sometimes there's just too much of it and just can't handle it all. They can't handle it.
Correct. We can work with them to either wean off or continue to supply them if need be. You know, they operated many, many years before we started taking our chippings there. It was just a way for us to get rid of those chippings and not have the landfill disposal costs. The other thing about the nursery is they're particular about what they take. We can't have any palm fronds or citrus, certain things they don't want in the chipping. So it can become labor intensive to separate that from the green waste pile as well. And then that ends up in the landfill because we don't have a place for it.
And then what does it use for fuel?
Diesel. It's got a diesel motor on it.
Okay, so the diesel provides the heat source?
It actually powers a fan that feeds the fire and creates an air curtain over the top of the box so you don't have any smoke or embers that emit.
Okay, so it doesn't ignite the waste?
No, that typically, so we spoke quite a bit with Coconino County, who has several of these in their forestry department. They use a road flare and toss that in to ignite, and then they generate the fan generates the air to stoke the flames and then create that curtain over the top.
Supervisor Pancrasi.
So it's not going to contribute to our PM10 problem?
No, in fact, it has to be permitted by ADEQ. We're going through that process now in the hopes we get it approved today. There's certain limitations on how much we can burn in a given day. We have reporting requirements, things like that associated with the permit, but it will not contribute to the PM10.
Or ozone?
Or ozone.
Thank you.
So how long before they can deliver it?
So they have about a 5-week build time. So pending the outcome here today, we'll get them a PO and we should have it shortly after the first meeting.
So in the meantime, the waste will be piling up, I assume. I assume the grinder's out of commission?
It is currently. We do have some parts on order to get it back up and running. happened was, and this happens quite frequently, when people are dragging this green waste out of their trucks or their trailers, there's something that gets caught up in there. Sometimes it's barbed wire, sometimes you never know. This particular one, a tire, was in the pile, and it hit that machine and jammed it up, and so we burned up the clutch. So we're working on getting that repaired.
You know, in some situations, that's a lot of information. Thank you very much. Any non-technical questions?
Will you continue to use the grinder or just kind of put it aside?
So we want to keep that in our fleet because it is more portable than this burn box will be, and it'll probably make its way over to our highway side for right-of-way cleanups, things like that. And then it would be a good machine to keep in our fleet in case we had a flood response or something like that, or any type of emergency that would generate a lot of debris. That will come in handy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Josh.
All right. Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the item as presented.
So moved.
There's a second.
Second.
Then motion and second to approve item 15 of the consent calendar agenda as presented. You know, it both includes the purchase and the authorization for you to proceed with and execute all contracts and documentation. Don't forget to check with legal. They seem to be pretty active right now. All right. So all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Legal isn't opposed, so we're going down the right path here.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you. All right, that takes care of all the consent items, including all those pulled. And it gets us into discussion and action items, where we'll open each of the following items separately for discussion and action as appropriate. The first item is the discussion and possible action regarding COVID-19 updates and activities. And we have with us the Public Health Director, Diana Gomez, and her crew. We even have Tony here, the emergency management people.
Yes. Good morning, Chairman Reyes, members of the board. Diana Gomez, Director of Public Health. Start off by thanking everybody that made the last saliva testing event a success. We were very grateful to the Cocopah tribe who allowed us to use the Cocopah Casino, and it took a lot of planning. We originally had 700 spaces. We asked people to pre-register because, to your point that you made earlier, we want the experience to be fast and quick. All those slots filled up. People were showing up and did not have that registration, and so we had health department staff and we had staff from the Regional Center for Board of Health on site who went ahead and provided additional testing. So at the end of the day, we ended up testing 1,309 individuals. So we almost doubled the capacity. There's obviously a need for testing, rose to the challenge. And people are already getting their results. So people were, you register for that, you can get your results in a secure email, and people were getting their results Sunday afternoon.
Yep.
It's very quick, very efficient. We're working with ASU to ensure we have more of these types of events and on a more permanent basis versus right now. We had our first big event, in the city of Yuma, then we moved out to East County, and we moved out to West County. We want to make sure that we had equitable access across the county. That's important. We have, if you see the lines driving in, you see that there's an increased demand. You saw our numbers. Today, we're going to report 127 new cases, which is comparably significantly lower than what we reported this weekend. On Sunday, we reported 408 cases. On Saturday, we reported 473. We are in substantial spread. It is very similar to what we're seeing across the state. The concerning part, again, is the strain that it puts on our healthcare system. We've done a lot of outreach, a lot of education. Testing continues to be ample. We are looking to continue to expand testing opportunities. I don't know if some of you saw in the paper, there was in South County, one of the schools opened up a testing site. That is an option. That's Test Now, and they're reaching out to schools that would provide free testing. But again, all those testing events, if you, those of you that have visited one of those saliva testing events, you see that it requires a lot of volunteers. It requires a site. It requires, so we're looking at expanding those testing opportunities throughout the county. But again, it's going to require a partnership with an entity that allows us to use their parking lot, the facility, access to for the volunteers, to have restrooms, and again, volunteer coordination with a specific municipality. So later this week, I'll be reaching out to the different jurisdictions to ask about their interest and again inquire for their help in order to expand testing capacity in our county. Yes, sir.
1 second. Why is the testing results so unpredictable in terms of the time it takes for the results to come back in? Because I know that fast testing, it is pretty fast, but in San Luis, Arizona, when people get tested, they have no way of knowing when they're going to get the results. Sometimes it's 14 days later, 16 days later, 18 days later. That is not useful at all. Is there something that's going on that we don't know about? The labs are taking too long. What's going on? How can somebody, and I know of a couple that went to get tested, and one of them got the results in 2 days, and the other one hasn't gotten them yet, and it's been 8 days, 10 days. And to add matters, insult to injury, the one that got the result was positive, and they lived together. So it's really difficult. I mean, there should be some consistency. At least there should be a sort of a time, a week or something, something that makes those tests really valuable. It's not very valuable when you get tested and 14 days later you find out you're positive after you've been to San Diego, you've been everywhere. So do you have any idea what's going on? Why is there so inconsistency?
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. The value of testing is to identify a positive result really quickly. We had not been notified. These testings, as you know, these are conducted by independent agencies throughout our community that are doing the testing. We had not had any reports that there was a delay. If there's a delay, and they should be consistent. And when you go get a test, you should be told you'll get the results within. You're generally given a range 2 to 5 days maybe, and that should be appropriate. If that's not happening, then obviously we need to know, and I will follow up with those agencies because we need to, it should be consistent. It should be across the board. If you're going to get tested, we've told people if you're symptomatic, if you're exhibiting these symptoms, the problem is the asymptomatic spread. And if you go get a test and you don't get the results and you think you're fine because you haven't been notified and you have a false sense of security thinking that everything's okay when it's not. So we will follow up. We have a couple of entities that are conducting the testing and we'll inquire about testing time turnaround and if it's something that has to do with the lab or the processing, but it should be consistent. If you and I go to the same site on the same day, the expectation is we get our results within the same time frame.
Yeah, I get a feeling, it's just a feeling that, if you test positive, there seems to be more of a sense of urgency getting to you, and it should be. But it doesn't take away the fact that if you get tested the same day, you should get results at least within the 24-hour period or something. Maybe it is more urgent to let someone that tests positive know right away. But still, I mean, it's taken 10 days, 12 days, 14, up to 18 days at times. And that, and I'm not saying that's consistent. I'm saying that it happens and it shouldn't happen that way. I mean, somebody shouldn't be living with somebody that has COVID positive and then not knowing whether they have it or not, although everybody should take precautions once they get that positive test. Just do a little research for me because
I will look into that because to your point, they're notified by the entity that conducted the test. And so if those reports, if that's not reported, we don't get that either. So then for our contact tracing,
it messes up.
We don't, that's important to us too. So we need to be aware that that's happening.
Right. I know that Supervisor Pancras wanted to say something. What did you want to say?
Thank you. Are these companies using private labs or are they using the same state lab or?
So it depends on who's doing the testing. Most of the state entities are using either Sonora Quest or LabCorp. Some of them are contracted with private labs as well. So we would have to know which entity is doing the testing and who they're contracting with. But I think, again, when you go get a test, you should be told it's going to be within this time frame. And if for some reason it's not, then we need to know because we need to know if there's delays, systematic delays. Is it something internal? Is it something with the lab? And those are important questions to know because people, if they don't get a call, may think that everything's okay.
I want to take a different tack with this, and it's the hospital and the situation with the healthcare providers. And we only have one hospital. I had the experience of going to visit the hospital last, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday last week, and it was packed. The waiting room was packed. And, it was, the person that I went to visit, had tested positive for COVID, had a complication, was there in the lobby. I mean, not in the lobby, but in the waiting area, sitting there because they had no rooms to put him in. So you have this person who tested positive, sitting watching TV on the waiting area. When I asked for him, they told me he's here somewhere. That's what they actually told me. He's here somewhere in the waiting area. And I'm going, is he in the waiting area? And he said, yes. And he was watching TV. I could actually found him. And he was watching TV in the waiting area. Now, my concern is, are we getting to a point now where we need to start thinking about a separate location where you can have COVID patients like we did, I don't know, 6 months ago when we're thinking about a field hospital or something like that? When do we start talking about that with them?
So we had those conversations with the hospital early on, and that's something that we explored with emergency management. The response was there's space, there's just an issue of staffing. Governor Ducey, as you know, just signed an executive order. In the past, we've, through the Office of Public Health Preparedness and Response and the Office of Emergency Management, we've submitted staffing requests for YRMC to be able to support those efforts and make sure that they have the staffing, because the issue was not about space. It was about making sure that they had staff to staff the rooms and the floors. We provided PPE. We put in those requests for staffing. We're hopeful that with the new influx of funding that's going to be provided by the governor's office, that can happen. We also have the surge line. The surge line has been used by Yuma Regional Medical Center. They've transferred patients, which ideally we want patients to stay here. We want people to stay in our community, but in order to avoid that influx, you use the surge line to not overwhelm the system. So that has been actively used since the start of the pandemic. It's available not just for COVID patients, but for flu patients as well, if they should have a complication. The issue is everybody else that needs critical care. And when you see these numbers, start to spike up, that's the concern. The concern is everything that's not COVID related. And if you live in this community and you need any type of critical care, making sure that that ICU bed is available, because that transfer, that surge line, is only for COVID or influenza type illness, not for anything else. So that poses those logistical challenges. So at this point, if people needed to be transferred specifically for COVID, I would guess that would be the response, to transfer more of the COVID patients to free up ICU for anything else. And the state still has St. Luke's Hospital, which would be what they would operate in that essence. It's certainly something we can revisit, but at this point, the mechanism's in place to be able to use the surge line. We don't. We have to talk about mitigation strategies locally, obviously, and what we can use. It's about community ownership. And what we can do here as a community to address the problem and stem it. Because again, even though that surge line is available and we can transfer patients, we all know that it's important for patients to be close to home. And we certainly don't want everybody else that has elective procedures or anything else that they've been waiting on to have to defer that treatment because there is no room or no ability to.
Well, do you have I don't need to know the number, but is there a trigger point where the hospital is running into trouble that isn't allowing the hospital themselves to make that decision? Because I know we work with the hospital,
right,
but sometimes people who are overwhelmed doesn't necessarily realize just how overwhelmed they are and how fast the problem's growing. I don't remember what the last peak number of patients the hospital had last time, but once you get over 100, 110, 112, 120, then I'm starting to think, do they have 200, 250 beds? I know the issue is staffing, but is there an issue with capacity in terms of infrastructure? You said no, but do they have a trigger point where you guys can start looking at options, or are we letting them decide when the options?
They're reporting that daily to the Arizona Department of Health Services. It's being monitored across the state. But to your point, I will follow up with them after this meeting and figure out when we can start talking about. I know that they've had alternative sites in other places where they've used, for example, school gyms. Again, the issue is going to be staffing, and if the hospital is struggling to get staffing, we would struggle likewise to get staffing for those alternative sites. But again, at this point, we could certainly explore all options.
First of all, when you get to the crisis point, it's too late to start planning for one. Retired nurses, retired doctors, people, traveling nurses. There's some additional help that may need to be secure ahead of time and not run into a crisis situation. I am a little concerned, and not because I want to know everything. I don't. is because, I certainly wouldn't like to be hit with something like, okay, well, you got 15% occupancy left, and then you end up like in California, which is not to mention, but I mean, we're talking about Imperial County. We're not talking about that far. They're in a lockdown situation now. Now, I hate to think that we can get to a point where the lockdown situation is the only solution, because as far as I'm concerned, once you get there, you fail. I mean, to me, going into a lockdown means we failed with every other method that we had. And I certainly wouldn't like to, we're always so proud of the way you've handled the situation as far as the public health concerns are related. But when it gets down to it, we only have one facility, that really can handle this. Maybe we ought to start thinking about what happens if that facility is overwhelmed. If I read what I've read correctly, I mean, they already had problems during flu season. I mean, they had restrictions on visitors. They had, in other words, they got up to 80%, sometimes in the winter because of all the winter visitors. I do understand that there's some changes in the area that, because of that. But just want to make sure that we get that we be prepared in case, something needs to be done. And I know Tony's here and I know that you have, people, but I mean, I like those questions to be asked before they need to be asked.
Correct.
Okay, so, and maybe next time you can give us a report on where that whole situation is.
Well, it may not be a bad idea to have the hospital here as well and provide an update of where, what they're, but I will certainly follow up with them.
Supervisor McLeod, you had.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be great if they could be here at the meeting on the 21st and just give an update. I'd appreciate that. How about flu? Just your standard run-of-the-mill flu. Have we had cases reported at this time?
So again, flu, we may have flu. We haven't had actual lab-reported cases of flu yet, or at least on Friday we hadn't. And again, that just means somebody got tested and it got reported. Doesn't mean flu is not circulating. And a lot of times people have flu-like symptoms and they just stay home and they never actually go to a doctor. So that might be why it's not being highly reported as it is, generally. The other piece of that is that we do have these mitigation things in place, including the mask wearing, that might be contributing to the slowdown of that. We have had a higher than usual uptake of the vaccine, the flu vaccine as well. So the combination of a higher than usual uptake or vaccination combined with these mitigations have significantly contributed to that. It is possible to get COVID and flu though. So we want people who have not gotten their flu shot to go ahead and get their flu shot and continue to practice this. So we certainly don't want that double wave to come in of people that have flu and they have complications associated with flu, which is something that we see every single year that you alluded to earlier, as well as the COVID surge. Because again, as mentioned earlier, it becomes a resource management issue as far as resourcing of the PPE, the staffing, again, the allocation of all those resources. So if you have not gotten your flu shot, please get your flu shot.
Already done.
All right. Did you have something else? I'm sorry, we interrupted with questions.
No, it's okay. So we've worked really hard to provide education to businesses. Again, with the opportunity, there was a lot of businesses that closed down. And then as we started to improve our numbers, we made significant gains. And when that happened, we started to open things up. We started to expand capacity. With opportunity to operate came that responsibility of enforcing those mitigations. And most businesses have done a really good job. You saw that there was an executive order that was signed, and that goes to address the issue that we discussed here earlier when an entity is not being compliant. And again, the new executive order gives the authority to, after you've had 2 substantiated complaints, closure, which we do not want to see. But again, I am incredibly confident that we've done an immense amount of education and outreach and technical assistance. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But regarding the enforcement piece, once the executive order was signed, that provides that ability. Then we also saw, we had the ability, events of 50 and over are prohibited unless a local jurisdiction allows them. And the local jurisdiction will allow them if they believe that sufficient CDC and ADHS mitigation protocol are in place. But now under the executive order, the events over 50 are still prohibited, but can still be approved by a local jurisdiction. This time around, though, If a jurisdiction, if a city or town or an unincorporated area approves an event over 50, there has to be additional compliance. They have to post the mitigation publicly on their website. They have to say, we approve this event, and here's the mitigation protocol that goes with it. Here's the event organizer, and they have to devote resources, including enforcement, meaning that the municipality that approves the event would be willing to have law enforcement responder or has agreed to commit the additional resources to support enforcement of compliance with those measures. And so that is something new. So you will see that moving forward. Right now we are in substantial spread, so we're not recommending large scale events. We haven't seen the Thanksgiving numbers yet. We're still waiting on those. We understand that there's COVID fatigue right now. Our schools have done, and a shout out to the schools. They've done an amazing job. We've seen cases in schools, but we have not seen transmission within the school system. Those schools are doing an amazing job with their protocol. They're erring on the side of caution. We are working with one of the school districts to do a pilot program. We'll be doing some surveillance opportunities for them with ASU, as well as some outreach and some education. So we're looking for those types of innovative events. Been working with Paul Byerly on the wastewater surveillance piece. We had an opportunity to do testing. He's been doing testing, and then we deployed we started to see an increase. We deployed testing, so that's the way that's supposed to work. So we're looking at shoring those types of things up as well. You heard that vaccine is coming. We are preparing for the deployment of vaccine. You've heard, that the initial allocation is going to be very limited. Because it is very limited, it'll be prioritized. We are looking at frontline healthcare workers, particularly those that are the highest risk of exposure, meaning you have direct patient care, to be the first people to receive the vaccine. We are looking at 2 front runners right now. We are looking at Pfizer and we're looking at Moderna. Both of them come in 2 doses. The Pfizer has to be kept ultra cold, which poses a challenge. The Moderna can be stored a little longer and on not as cold temperatures. Again, both require 2 doses to provide full immunity. So when we deploy the first dose, we will have to schedule your second appointment because there's different dosage, different formulations, and different storage guidelines. You need to take the same vaccine, the first and the second dose, obviously the same vaccine. So we are working with our community partners to make sure we identify those first line responders so that we can get that as soon as we get the vaccine. And so we're looking at a deployment in the next week, 2 weeks period. So we are transitioning to that, and rapid testing, we have pushed that out to support efforts in the community. We have reached out to first responders. We have reached out to the schools who are applying for CLIA waivers. And so we are pushing our rapid tests to them, training them so that they can conduct their own rapid tests as we move towards the vaccine deployment piece.
I know we talked about this some time ago about the ability that the county health department has to keep something in deep freeze. Because I think the Pfizer or something, it's like -70 or some unachievable.
Right.
I mean, you do have to have an ultra cold storage to be able to keep that up. I know that it's going to come packaged in a way that will last a certain amount of time, and you guys are going to make sure that none of that is wasted.
Correct.
But are you considering coordinating with the local Walmart or whatever for storage of the other one? Because they do have -40s. Storage available in some stores. I know some in San Luis that do that. And it may be wise to connect in case you have to store something at that low temperature. You have available freezer space is basically what it boils down. So
We already have one.
We already have
Schwann's.
So what we're doing now, so those will be shipped in thermal boxes that again has a really finite period of how many times you can open the box, how it needs to be stored. And then the Moderna one, which comes right after one, that being the Pfizer one, the Moderna one can be kept at regular freezer temperatures. And then after that, the vaccine candidates that are coming after that would not require that ultra cold storage. But we are along with the state health department has worked on a vaccine deployment plan for several months. in conversations about what this deployment would look like. For example, we know that people living in congregate settings, particularly people living in nursing homes, are at high risk, and they're certainly within the priority population. We'll be partnering with pharmacies like Walgreens and CVS who will go out and provide those vaccinations. So again, partnering with those pharmacies and different community agencies is going to be key to making that deployment. So right now, very pleased to say that we've had a couple of agencies, to your point, volunteer acquisition during this point, and collaboration is going to be key in making sure that this vaccine is accessible and rapidly deployed. So as soon as we get those, the initial allocation again is small, but additional allocations are expected to be approved on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. And as we get those, it's going to go by really fast in that planning phase that you discussed.
Right.
We've been working on, and certainly having dialogue on an ongoing basis.
Okay, so you feel confident that you won't be put in a situation where you may waste some because you don't have storage facilities?
Wasting a vaccine is not an option. And so actually what we're doing is, in addition to surveying the number of first responders right now, we were concerned about vaccine hesitancy, at least with the priority population right now. There's a strong indication that most people want to get the vaccine within that priority group. So right now, what we're fielding is making sure that we have enough vaccine to push it out as needed to meet the demand. So yes, there is no, wasting a vaccine is not an option.
Right. Anything else, guys?
No, I don't think so. Just maybe a couple of commendations. Again, praise for you and all of your staff for the great work. And I have every confidence that you'll be able to pull this off. No doubt in my mind.
But no pressure.
And then thank Mayor Nichols for being very proactive and coming up with that space for you, should you need it.
Now, there's an item for discussion later on the meeting that I would like you to stay for. I know that you're really busy, you guys are really busy, but there's an item in there about broadband that I think, may involve some coordination between the schools and so forth, that I think is going to be, I'd like you to be present just in case we need some advice from the health side of things. So Tony and your staff. So if you could remain, I'll try to push that as fast as possible, okay?
Yes, sir.
Anything else from her? No? Thank you very much,
Thank
Diana.
you.
Mrs. Gomez. All right, there's no need for action in this, so we're gonna go on to item number 3, which is the,
Mr. Chairman, do you want to just go ahead and open up number 7 now?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, we got a bunch of stuff to go through, so I don't even think Paul is here. Paul is supposed to give the presentation on number 7, so, just, could you do that, Susan? Just sort of get Paul in here. We're gonna go take some other stuff, but he may be thinking we're gonna take him on the regular agenda process. So we're gonna go to number 2, which is sitting as the Board of Directors of Yuma County Improvement District number 2017-02, the Tacna Water. We'll conduct a public hearing to discuss the acceptance of $807,153 Community Development Block Grant for engineering, design, and land acquisition, and to consider comments and/or objections to the acceptance of grant funding, and B, authorize the Chairman of the Board of Directors to execute the intergovernmental agreement with the County of Yuma for acceptance of the grant funds, establish a capital improvement project CIP fund number for the district, and adopt a budget amendment resolution number 21-24, transferring $200,000 of CDBG grant funds and $200,000 of available and appropriated contingency from community development to Tacna CIP for engineering design costs. Oh, that was a long one. Rachel?
I'm so sorry that's so long.
No, it's okay. Don't be. I'm long-winded.
Members of the board, thank you. We're here to hold a public hearing for the residents of the Tacna area, and so that they can provide either positive, negative comments or objections to the signing of this $807,000 grant. And the reason we do that is because there is potential for them in the future, if we do not proceed to construction, that they might have to repay that. We've never had that happen, but they have to be aware of it.
All right.
So.
Okay, let me open up the public hearing of this portion. We are now opening up a public hearing to discuss the acceptance of $807,153 of Community Development Block Grant for engineering, design, and land acquisition. And we will consider comments or objections to the acceptance of the grant funding. Is there anyone here that wants to address the board on this item? I can see an overwhelming show of support from the community out there. If you don't have any objections to it now, hold your peace or whatever. Right, so I'm going to close the public hearing comment of this portion and move on to the action by the board. Do you have any comments? Sure.
Yeah. Rachel, can you explain how paragraph D works? It was a little bit confusing to me.
It is, because we did have to have money available whenever CDBG advances money from the county and downflows it to the district. We did not have any CIP budget available at that time. We didn't anticipate getting this money. And so we felt they were able to find $200,000 that could be utilized as we go forward and pay those invoices from whichever, from the, for the engineer. And it'll be offsetting. As we get one paid, we'll probably have another one. It's kind of like a 30, 60, 90-day invoice type thing that gets paid. So 200,000 would be adequate to be able to pay our bills up to that amount. And it shouldn't be 807,000, but.
Will the grant backfill the $200,000 that we're taking out of community development?
I'm sorry?
There's $200,000 mentioned there.
Yes.
And one of them is from contingency.
Correct.
And so will the grant backfill that, or is the county putting $200,000 toward the project?
There is contingency there. I'm not sure where finance found that contingency for us, but it is there. And the grant money will pay that back.
It'll backfill it. Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying. I
tried
reading all of it. I really couldn't figure it out. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Credit.
Right,
Yeah.
so we have, the item, we conducted the public hearing. The next item is to authorize the chairman to establish a capital improvement project and to adopt budget amendment resolution number 2124. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved. Oh,
It's been
I'll
motion and second to go ahead and do B, C, and D, as I stated before. Any more discussion on this item? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
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 Congratulations, Supervisor
Congratulations,
Simmons.
Supervisor Simmons.
Hey, Simmons. They've
Okay,
needed
so
it
we're
out there
going
for a
to-
long time.
We're going to move on with another item on this particular issue. So the next one is the sitting as the Yuma County Board of Supervisors approve and authorize the chairman of the board to sign an intergovernmental agreement between Yuma County and Improvement District number 2017-02, which we call Tacna Water, utilizing community development block funds for the Tacna Water Infrastructure Project. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Motion and second to go ahead and approve item number 3 as presented. Any more discussion or any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. I know that I call you in, Paul, because I wanted to speed up item number 7, but I'm going to take care of this pension fund thing as quickly as possible so that we can get these people that are supposed to be on the phone from, I think, Italy or Belgium, I don't know. Chicago, excuse me, Chicago. It's almost the same. It's a foreign country. Anyway, so we have financial services, and this is a pension plan. What's it called? Oh, no, it doesn't, it's not called anything. It just says financial services. We are to adopt a resolution number 2020-52, approving the form and authorizing the execution and delivery of a fifth purchase agreement, a fifth trust agreement, and other necessary agreement, instruments, and documents, approving the sale and execution and delivery of place revenue obligations in one or more series. Do I hear noise? Oh. In the amount not to exceed $36 million aggregate principal amount to liquidate the estimated public safety personal retirement system and corrections officer retirement plan, pension plan, unfunded liability. Item number C will be delegating authority to the county administrator or the chief financial officer to determine certain matters with respect to the foregoing. Approving the necessary budget adjustment to complete the transaction in the current fiscal year and declaring an emergency. This will require a roll call, okay? So I want to make sure that the board members understand that anytime we do have an emergency declaration, we need it to go through with a supermajority of the board members. So, Gil, would you get us going?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good morning. Gil Villegas, Chief Financial Officer. Today with me is Mr. Mark Reeder. He is with Stifel, our underwriter. for this particular issuance. This is the last step that we have, so we are in compliance with statute, and we can issue the not to exceed $36 million for PSPRS and Corp pension unfunded liability. Back in November 16, we had a public hearing in regards to this resolution to open it to receive any comments from the public. We did not receive any comments since then until today, so we are good to go. The issuance is not to exceed $36 million, an estimated cost of $11.3 million. If we use this money to pay PSPRS and Corp, it's going to be saving us around $17.8 million in present value savings. These are all, of course, all estimated. So this morning, we're asking the board to adopt resolution 2020-52. Mr. Reader and the people are in Chicago are here available to answer any questions that you might have.
The people in Chicago, could you introduce yourself? Is there anyone from Chicago?
Yes.
All right. Paul?
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
This is Omar Nagastani.
Oh.
I'm a managing director here with People, and I lead our pension practice.
Right. Okay, so we just wanted to have the record show that you were on the phone in case we had any questions. I know Mark, Mr. Reader, is pretty well versed with this, but you just wanted to make sure we had someone and we acknowledged that they were on the phone. Now, we've gone through the presentations, we have gotten the details, and this was just the process where we sort of allow or let whatever the right definition is, the public make a comment, either in favor or against, or, just make a comment. Now, the crux of this situation is that we have a very high liability, pension fund liability, and we're trying to cover it in a way that makes it easier to plan in future years and save us the additional funds it will take to pay it as it comes along and, as a bill every year. We have seen the what do you call it, mortgage?
Interest rates?
No, the
amortization schedule.
The amortization, we've seen the amortization scales, and it shows to us that if we don't take care of this, the amount will continue to grow exponentially throughout the years to the point that it would take $7 or $8 million or $9 million a year just to be able to pay it in the near future. So we think, at least I think, it's wise for us to settle this situation, to make sure that the more things we do and the more that the fund itself reaches a point where it's solid, the better off every member of that pension plan would be. And we asked the questions in the past about whether us taking care of our obligation, what it meant to the pension fund itself. We were told that we're taking care of our problem, we're not taking care of somebody else's problem, and that is the ultimate goal at this particular time. Correct?
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
So, Supervisor McLeod?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to recognize Mr. Reader. It's been a great relationship. I thank you for the work that you've done. I'd also like to point out for the public, every year going forward, the repayments of this bond never exceeds what our liability to PSPRS would be. I was amazed by that. I would figure we're paying more up front. For the first 5 years, I mean, it's like, what, $1,500, and it goes as low as like 67, I think. So those numbers are very small. But in those out years, the numbers are massive and saving us millions of dollars a year. So I commend you and Mr. Reader for putting together something like this that is so beneficial to our taxpayers. And I wanted to bring something else up too. I was approached by a gentleman, wanted to know if this was a new line item on property taxes. So would you explain for the public, Gil, how that is not the case? This is not going to go on people's property tax bill?
No, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor McLeod, no. This is a revenue bond issuance that we're going to do. And what we're doing, we're pledging several sources of revenue that we currently are receiving. So actually our taxes, our VLT, our state share of taxes, part of our entire budget is going to cover for this payment. In addition to that, because we're going to be able to save some money, we're not going to be paying as much to PSPRS. Those additional savings that we're going to receive are also going to contribute to make these payments. So all this, the idea is all this to be seamless when it comes to our budget preparation. We're just going to set up another debt service payment with the revenues that we're currently receiving.
Yeah, well, I just want to make it clear, everything, every kind of debt and obligation that we acquire affects the budget. And the budget is based on many different sources of revenue, one of which is the property taxes. And the idea right now is that this would save us the painful process of having to go out and add more taxes to the residents. This is actually a process to save money, not to add more money or add more cost to what's already a difficult situation. So,
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. It's one of the benefits of taking care of this liability right up front. It's more manageable for our budget process as well. We know exactly how much we need to pay. We know exactly how much we need to contribute. So we don't have those surprises in year 5 or 6 where our unfunded pension liability rate is going to jump from $1 million to $6 million that we need to do it.
Right.
That's the reason why we structure the debt the way it is.
Yeah, and with that, if I may, what that gentleman was afraid of was that there would be a new line item on the property tax that would be repaying, kind of like when the schools do a bond, right? And so if he's thinking that, there's got to be other people thinking that. And I wanted to clarify that. You will not see a new line item on your property tax bill.
That is correct.
Thank you.
all
Thank
right.
you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? If not, then I'll go ahead and proceed with the action items on this particular item. The first one is to adopt resolution number 2020-52, approving the form and authorizing the execution and delivery of a fifth purchase agreement, a fifth trust agreement, and other necessary agreements, instruments, and documents. I'll entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 2020-52.
So moved.
Second.
Now, do I need to make sure that all that we do is within the emergency clause, or we take a vote, a roll call vote in every item just in case, or is it? I think it would be better this way. I mean, or I'll take a motion that covers every item and the emergency clause, whichever it's more appropriate. Which it doesn't matter as long as we have the roll call.
It doesn't matter, Mr. Sherman. The declaration is emergency, so we can act expeditiously.
Yeah,
to
well, I know
get
what the
interest.
emergency declaration is.
Public
Yeah.
statement for the public.
But every item we take right now, to make it effective, it needs to be included in an emergency clause. And my question maybe to legal is, do we want to be declaring an emergency on every time we make a decision on this item, or only,
Can we just do them all at one time, Mr.
I
Chairman?
think so. I think we better go through the whole thing at one single time and declare an emergency and vote on them all at the same time, okay? 'Cause
Right,
I think
yeah, the
that
whole
saves-
group.
All right, so the first item is adopt resolution number 2020-52. The next one is approving the sale and execution, delivery of price revenue obligations. The third is delegating authority to the county administrator and the chief financial officer. And the fourth one is approving the necessary budget adjustment, and the fifth one is declaring an emergency. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
Yeah, point of
So
order. We
moved.
have a motion on the floor.
Oh, we
It
do
should be
have a
I'd
motion.
withdrawn.
like to, yeah, I'd
You
like to
withdraw it?
include B, C, D, and E to my motion.
Okay, so the motion is items A, B, C, D, and E, which is declaring an emergency. Are we okay? Are we clear? Is that okay?
Somebody needs to
Second.
second it.
Okay, all right. There's been a motion and a second. We got, okay, all right. So there will be a roll call vote because there is a declaring an emergency section on this motion. So would you please take a roll call, Mrs. Doughton?
Supervisor Pancrazzi?
Aye.
Supervisor Porches?
Aye.
Supervisor McLeod?
Aye.
Supervisor Simmons?
Aye.
Chairman Reyes?
Aye. I was gonna vote no, but just to make it exciting, but.
The motion carries 5 to
It doesn't
0.
work. Everybody voted aye already, so let's move on. So there you have it, okay? I know that this is a very momentous decision that we made. I mean, it's not every day that we go out and basically indebt the county for $36 million. But it is one of those situations where I think the solution really works better than the problem, than the problem. In other words, it doesn't make the problem any worse. It actually solves the problem. So I want to thank everybody involved, including administration and the people from Stifel, and you, Hill, for bringing it over to us and making sure that we deal with it in a responsible way, in a responsible manner. Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you.
Everybody noticed it was the old timers
Thank
that
you, Mark.
wanted to stir the pot.
Take care.
I know. I'm going to, How long is your financial presentation? Gil, you're next. Okay, because I got you, and then I got the next item, which is, oh, wow, we still have another item. Okay, let's move it, because we got 7 coming up. You have 2 minutes. Nah, I'm just kidding. Yeah, more than that. I don't want to make you nervous, Gil. You have all the time you need.
No pressure, right,
As long as it doesn't exceed 5 minutes.
Open the presentation, please. Yes. It's Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Gil Villegas, Chief Financial Officer, to deliver the second presentation on revenues. When the budget was adopted early this fiscal year, it was decided that we were going to continue to monitor the general fund, actually all the funds revenues, to see if we had any drastic reductions in revenue or any drastic increases in revenue. This is what the idea, to see if we could unsequester the funds that we have sequestered at the beginning of the fiscal year. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm just going to go through the first 3 months in the current fiscal year, July, August, and September. So for the month of July, you actually saw these numbers when I did my first presentation in September. What we have here, being consistent with what I showed to you guys back in September, we are concentrated in our 3 major sources of revenue, which are our property taxes, our sales taxes, local sales taxes, and the state share sales taxes. I have included all-encompassing revenue line items for all other revenues, and those revenues include our charge for services, our legal fees, fines, etc. All the businesses that we conduct and all the revenues that we receive for the general fund. So for July, we received these numbers around September. Usually there is 2 months delay for the numbers received from the Arizona Department of Revenue. All these numbers are as reported by ADAR. For the sales taxes, $1.4 million collections. Usually for Yuma County, May, June, July, August, those are slow months. We struggle to get $1 million in revenue on local sales taxes revenue. For this month, we see an exception. We actually received $1,440,000 in change, which represent an increase of almost $400,000 from the previous fiscal year.
That's probably all the toilet paper we're selling right now. That's a lot of toilet paper out there.
That could be one of the reasons, Mr. Sherman. One thing that I forgot to mention at the beginning, what I'm presenting to you, I'm presenting the numbers for the current month right here. We have another column with the cumulative numbers from the beginning of the fiscal year. I have a percentage column that compares month to month in the current fiscal year. So I apologize for the error. This column here should be only for the cumulative. And then the column where I'm going to be concentrating most of the time is how are we doing compared to the prior fiscal year. As a reminder, our budgeted revenue at $88.9 million. It was flat from fiscal year 19 because of the speculation that we had with COVID. We weren't sure how we can mitigate with the uncertainty. So we said flat fiscal year 2019, 1% increase the maximum. So I'm also including the numbers of unemployment as provided by the Labor Statistics Department. So continuing with July, like I said, we had a record-setting collections in our local sales taxes, $1.4 million. That's
amazing.
It's just amazing. I'm still trying to get around what was making so much of the increase.
I think it's just the fact that people don't go someplace else to buy stuff. They buy it in Yuma County. And because you can't really go out and shop someplace else, you're shopping local.
I was sharing that information with our Stifel, our consultant here, and he was pretty much agreeing with that. Yeah, it seems to be that the majority of people, because they couldn't go out on vacation, they are decided to stay here, spend the money here, and that is what is making our economy moving.
Now, Gil, the question that I have is, we had a court case that basically forced the internet sales providers, Amazon and eBay and so forth, to charge sales taxes and send them to the state or send them here. Was that available last year or is it this year?
It started in October 2019. And that's when the...
So we're not getting there yet.
Actually, we have been receiving those collections already for July 2020. It's been
been a
close to a
year.
year now.
All right, so that may,
That's
that
one
may
of the
be.
reasons why we've seen an increase in our local sales taxes, but I have to say it hasn't been that much significant.
All right, okay.
So continuing with our local sales taxes here, comparing to the prior month, the month of June 2020, we saw a reduction of around $63,000. I thought it was going to be at the beginning of a decline in our collections because stimulus monies were no longer available, income tax refunds were no longer available, but that was not the case, as you can see in the following month. And I'll show you that in a minute. At the end, what we have with our local sales taxes, we are showing 1.1% above the same time for the prior fiscal year. Usually, like I said, it's flat, there should be no increase, but we are, right now, especially our local sales taxes are trending very high. What I did a comparison, July 2020 to July 19, how much more money, or what's the percentage that we're above the regular collections? Whopping 37.6%, almost 38% more than the prior fiscal year at the same time. Sales taxes is not as good as we are doing, but still 15%. We almost never see this increase with state sales taxes. All other, it's a significant reduction here as compared to the prior fiscal year. All that has to do with timing. Because for the current fiscal year, we're not charging the departments, for example, for indirect cost and all that stuff. So I wouldn't pay a lot of attention to that number. I'm in August. For the month of August, once again, I thought that we were going to see a continued reduction in collections for our local sales taxes. Happens that we actually recuperated the $65,000 that we lost, or that was produced for the month of July. An additional $415,000 more in local sales tax collections. Again, cumulative to the prior fiscal year for the month of August, 37, almost 38% more than the fiscal year 18-19. Sales taxes, we saw another decrease in collections, a reduction of 12.8%. It was around $274,000 less. That was a concern to me, saying this is the second month that we have a reduction in local and state share taxes. Something was going on. Later I come to find out it was just timing, how the Arizona Department of Revenue and the Treasurer was distributing making the distribution to us. You will see now that we started charging all other Yuma County revenues, so we reduced the gap as compared to the prior fiscal year. For the month of August, we were 10% above last fiscal year, which equates around $1 million in collections. Finally, the month of September. For the month of September, that's the first month when we started to receive some property taxes collections. Usually the first installment is due November 1st. So there are some early payers that they'd like to make their payments, make the taxes to the Treasurer's office. Also, we need to take into consideration that the office was closed, and we're taking payments through mail, so there was a delay on the postings as well. The reason what I'm saying that is because during the month of September, we saw almost $200,000 in collected. The prior years, usually we're collecting $500,000 in property taxes already. When I first saw that number, again, it was another concern to say, well, maybe our property taxes are not coming in as strong as we expected. But you will see that that was not the case. Sales taxes, we saw a reduction from the prior month, around 10%. But cumulative, we are still trending very strong, 31.5% as compared to the prior fiscal year. I wanted to include the month of October. Now, we have not received the monthly sales taxes for Yuma County or for the state share tax. But the reason why I wanted to include October is because I wanted to show how well we did with the property taxes. Cumulative, well, actually for the month we received $11.5 million. That equates to around 36% of our levy. Usually I went back the last 3 years to see how our collections were for the month of October. We were right on target, 36.3, 36.6. This year, we are at 36.9% collections as compared to our levy. Once again, our property taxes are coming in, at least for the first installment that it was due. And we have, well, actually did not include the sales tax, the county sales tax and the state sales taxes, because those numbers are not available. Bottom line, at the end for the month of October, without showing the two amounts for sales taxes, we are trending around 50% above last fiscal year. Now, considering that we were contemplating a flat no increase in revenue, the county is doing very well.
Yeah, go ahead. I got some comments. But.
Yeah, Gil, in the years that we've been working together, you've done a good job on projections. You did horribly this year. Terrible.
Thank you.
And I can't tell you how pleased I am that your projections were so bad. This is amazing news. I know we sat here listening to these dire projections, and I understand why you made them. That's what we all thought, right? It just is amazing to me that these are the numbers.
Chairman, Supervisor McLeod, unexpected. It's just, if someone would have told me at the beginning of the fiscal year this was going to happen, I would have said, I don't believe you. You're crazy. Our revenues are coming in despite of the pandemic. I'm glad that the citizens have decided to stay here and keep our economy, local economy moving, reflections on our local sales taxes, so we're doing very well. This is the reason why we're getting a very good credit rating in our PSPRS and Corp, because our revenues are coming strong regardless of the pandemic. So unless something drastic happens in the following years, when the following quarters they happen, I don't see how that is going to have a significant impact. In regards to projections, one of the things that we have been working very hard is to have a healthy fund balance in the general fund. Some of the projections have been conservative. As alluding to that, we need to have a strong fund balance so we can have good numbers when credit rating companies are rating Yuma County to see how we're doing.
Right. Supervisor Borges.
I just want to make some comments. During up until today, people are still receiving unemployment. So the people that were unemployed were getting here in Arizona, $865 a week. When normally they get only $265 per week. So that was $600. That's quite a bit of money. So that money was coming back in here to this economy here in Yuma. When you have a married couple, that's a significant amount of money. I mean, there was in July, August, you try to go buy a bike at Walmart, you couldn't find one. A lot of the stores, even the high-end bicycles were not available. So people have been spending that money. So, but that's going to stop. So my deal is it's not going to continue forever. No vacations. A lot of people didn't go out. They stayed here. Teachers were not going to work. So they're not spending on gas. They stayed home. Kids are home. So they're spending more on food because the kids are home. Every parent, because they got the kids. So I just want us to be careful and don't think that we'll see it the following year or once this pandemic settles and we get the vaccines and we start seeing that progress, we need to come down back to earth and reality and say, because I don't want to see, at least when we start working on the budget, that, because we got this, it's going to continue. And we're going to incur expenses that are going to be every year. So just keep in mind of that.
In other words, continue to plan, conservative.
Very.
Chairman, Supervisor Porches, this is my third year doing projections, so you can see that I'm
Continue
an
being
accountant,
wrong.
very conservative projections when it comes. Yes, we do, with the entire BRT team, that we do take that into consideration, that this might be
A one-time.
a one-time situation. But right now, our revenues are really coming very well.
Hill, one more comment about your presentation. I understood your presentation. I think I could follow it because you explained it relatively well. But when you're talking about, monthly comparison to last year, it'd be nice if you put the last year's amount and then this year's amount so that we could actually see it. I know you tell us it's 31%, it's 100%. That's fine. But if you could see it, if you could just put it there for us to see, it would be nice. Because I think it clears it out. Because you do mention it's 10% more than last year, so on and so forth. And obviously, you know what you're talking about. But for us dummies, it'd be nice to see, the old amount, the new amount.
The dollars.
The dollars amounts, just in your presentation. And when you do this October 2020 and you don't have the sales taxes, Yuma County or state sales tax, it really, I feel that I see the 31% and the 18% on the cumulative. And I think you know the numbers, right, from the past, from cumulative. So I figured you already sort of had planned. How you came up with 15.1% is that you already utilized, last month's number or something. I don't know how you came up with the 15%, but you came up with it.
The 15% is comparing current fiscal year to last fiscal year 1920.
So that's a cumulative of the whole year.
The same criteria, the same months, everything.
Yep. How would you know that without knowing the Yuma County sales taxes and state taxes?
Because the comparison that I'm doing right now does not include the sales taxes
So
for
it's
Yuma
not
County
really-
State for
That doesn't include it, yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. I didn't contemplate them for last year as well, so I extrapolated.
All right.
So that 15.1% translate to around $3.5 million above
Revenues last year.
as compared to.
Yeah, well, let's not say that too much and too long. Move
Yeah,
on.
It's just a one-time thing, yeah.
It's a one-time thing. So for the first quarter, better than expected collections. We don't see a dramatic decrease in revenues. Property taxes, cumulative, around $418,000 more than the prior fiscal year. Yuma County sales taxes, $1,030,000 sales taxes. State sales taxes, $1,012,000. And even our regular collections are higher than anticipated, than last fiscal year,
All right.
$1.4 million. Now, seeing these numbers, we would like to recommend to the Board of Supervisors. Administration told me if we can make a recommendation to early release the sequestered funds that we have self-imposed at the beginning of the budget. These are the items that are currently pending right now. Back in September, I believe, when we approved the sheriff vehicles, the majority of the vehicles were also unsequestered. It was around $1.1 million.
Explain to me why, I know why we sequester the money, but explain to me, where is it? Is it in personnel, FTEs? Is it in salaries, benefits? Is that where we?
All this is already contemplated in our budget. It's in personnel. All this money is in personnel, capital outlay, or before the vehicles that were in capital outlay as well. They already budgeted for it. We just have not
Release the money.
or approved any of the market adjustments, any of the hire and the fire FTEs.
I see that we have market and compression for the attorneys. Can we discuss that separately? Nah, I'm just kidding, just kidding, just kidding. We should. Okay, so what you're asking us today is, based on this presentation, you want us to release the sequestration process and allow the staff to start working and releasing those funds to the proper departments. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Sherman. The motion, I believe, is for consideration of the board to unsequester the sequester expenditures at the beginning of this year.
Okay. Do I hear a motion from the board?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Then motion and second to release the sequester funds from and allow that to be spent as authorized by the budget. Any more discussion on this? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. An early Christmas present to some people? All right. Okay, thank you, Gil. Thank you. Anything else? No? Good. Thank you for the presentation. let's just not, go too far with that. Okay, so we have an item, which is item number 6. We're gonna take care of it. Adopt resolution number 2020-53, amending Appendix A and deleting Appendix D and E of the Yuma County 5-year Economic Development Plan, superseding resolution number 2020-08. Paul, I know you got 6 and 7, so might as well take care of 6.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Paul Melcher, Director of Economic Development and Intergovernmental Affairs. Mr. Chairman, I provided something of a cheat sheet for the board to review as we go along. If you'd like to do it management by exception, I could go into great detail over each one.
Go into great detail.
So in short, what we have is on the fairgrounds, we've amended our strategy. We were looking at a lot of federal grants in order to provide money for land acquisition and then fairgrounds development afterward. Almost all of those funds have fallen through to some point. Some became unavailable to us, so that what the Fair Relocation Committee has decided is that the better option here is to go after a federal allocation. They either go through the National Defense Authorization Act or look through the representation from Congress to go after that and just look for a total sum to be able to relocate the fairgrounds. So that amends that objective. The second one is just changing updating the dates to reflect the changes from the December due dates. And number 3, we wanted again, the Yuma Regional Fiber Plan will be approved here in the next December and January. So we wanted to make sure that those dates are updated and included in that objective. Another one, we shifted the dates for number 4 to fiscal year 2021 to 22 because of the COVID pandemic. Number 5, we had looked at last year advocating for Arizona at Work to make sure that they were receiving the top training dollars that they were supposed to be allocated. It became aware to staff that those allocations are now based on a formula, so there's no need for that advocacy work, so we just removed that item in total. Number 7, we're going to reintroduce this bill in the 55th legislature coming up. Just as an FYI, moving forward, that'll be January 13th, will be the start of the next legislative session, barring any special session that might come forward.
Hold that right there. I know this is not in the agenda as a discussion item, but I would like to add it for some discussion. It is placing this local preference for business preference in our radar screen. In other words, just making sure that when we have an opportunity, we start discussing putting this in front of the CSA Legislative Priority Board, okay?
Chairman?
Sure.
On that point, the Supreme Court ruled that it is unconstitutional for the counties to have a local preference.
Really?
If I'm not mistaken. Ed, can you verify that? Isn't that the case?
Mr. Chairman, there is some case law that suggests that it may be unconstitutional.
Yeah,
How do the
I think the
cities do
Supreme
it?
Court handed that down, did they not, Ed?
How did the
I think
cities
the
do it?
cities, I'm not sure how the cities do it. I do know that they limit how much they do it and whether or not they've been involved in litigation.
All right. Well, give us a little background on it when you get a chance, so we can take a look.
Counties, I don't think
for
counties can.
I don't know. I mean, if it was unconstitutional, the cities couldn't do it. I mean, it's not a matter of a charter; it's a matter of constitutional
I think it's
issues.
because it's county government and not city.
And do me a favor. Let's just put it in the radar. Give us the information, and we'll go from there. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Paul. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine, Mr. Chairman. I'm at priority number 8, which is 7 as it was amended. One of the goals of increasing our economic development profile in not only the state but also nationally and internationally was to create a social media program. With COVID-19, we re-emphasized some areas, so we placed the redevelopment of that social media plan for next year. The next one is an important one. As we've looked at the COVID-19 response, we've understood that healthcare is kind of the final defense in terms of treatment. And one of the things that we wanted to do last year was reinforce the repayment of those loans to encourage more persons to enter into the medical field. So we want to continue that advocacy effort for next year. So looking at year 2 then, there wasn't a priority number 1. That still will remain the same. Priority number 2 was the fiber run from the city of Somerton down to the San Luis commercial port of entry. So we've added 2 additional stakeholders to that. and we continue to move forward with that project. Excuse me. Priority number 3 remained unchanged. Priority number 4 is just what I wanted to do as part of these updates was to change out any references to specific names to titles to make that as clear as possible. Guess that was a good lesson learned for that one. Number 5 stays the same. Number 6 stays the same. Number 7 is the revolving loan fund. As I reported several months ago, WAED has already achieved success with establishing the revolving loan fund. So we actually bumped that up to having achieved that objective for that year. And all they're really looking at now is the implementation portion of that. Number 8 was, again, just changing dates. What we've been looking at here with Farm Bureau is ongoing discussions related to biosolids. This would be a continuation of that. So combining this discussion with biosolids makes a lot of sense moving forward, and just changing the dates and updating that. Number 10 is an insert. One of the things that we've been looking at is expanding the county's ability to offer incentives. The GIPLET is another way that we could do that. So we wanted to move that forward from year 3 to year 2 to get that available. To get, sometimes it seems like it's a very complicated process. So we think that reaching out to the community to let them know how that might work to their advantage was one of the highlights or objectives we wanted to move forward. Year 3, I would skip down into that number 5 was the one. Number 4 were the updates on the dates for getting the private water companies analysis completed. Number 1 in year 4 was looking at the pop-up shops and just changing that date on number 2 to reflect the fact that we'd already passed that. We would originally looked at participating in the REPI portion because we thought that might be an avenue for the property access for the Yuma County Fairgrounds relocation. When those fundings didn't pan out, when the REPI challenge was no longer an option, then we just figure as part of the preservation of MCAS that could continue in the out years. Mr. Chairman, that concludes all of the amendments to the plan. Of note also, we had originally intended to track all of these changes within the plan as part of Appendix D. And then after we looked at the enormity of what that might encompass, when you look at the changes, we thought that what we could do is incorporate the changes, update the plan date as of, and then keep that, because once you start updating this and tracking this, we'll have 20-some pages of amendments already adopted to the plan. It just makes it more cumbersome. So that was the other aspect of eliminating appendices D and E to streamline that process. Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to entertain any questions the board might have.
Yeah, Supervisor McLeod.
Just a comment, Paul, as I was looking through this, the original document, not the updates. There's 2 headers for number 5 in year 1. Mm-hmm. It's basically a typo. I just thought you might want to clean that up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Supervisor McLeod, that changes from 5 to 6 on the draft portion. Are you talking about the final copy?
Just what I'm looking at on, it's not a big deal. I just thought you might want to know.
I'll take a look at it though, just in case.
I can show you electronically if you like.
Okay.
All right. Any more comments or any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to go ahead and make the changes.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
So this will be resolution number 2020-53. Any more comments or questions? No? All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Flawlessly move into item number 7, which is discussion and possible action regarding options for the Yuma County Board of Supervisors to support the expansion and improvement of broadband. And I'd like to give a little bit of background on this, Paul, if I may. Some time ago, when this whole pandemic situation started going, there was a lot of concern about distance learning. And most schools began with some sort of hybrid program that allowed them to handle days in school and then days at home. it immediately brought forward the problem that we've been working on for for just a few years back, which is broadband availability in Yuma County, especially in the areas, outlying areas of Yuma County. I think cities have a lot more options, just simply because the providers are more in tune with providing services where they can actually make a profit. Being out in the outlying areas places a lot of the students at a disadvantage because their service isn't that good. Not only that, but with the advent of working at home, a lot of the people that live out in the county also don't have enough, internet capability to actually work from home. So, because of the situation and because of this fast evolving situation of the lack of better service out in the outlying communities, I tasked Paul and Administrator Susan Thorpe to see what it would take for us to assist in either the expansion or the improvement of broadband services out in the outlying areas, focusing on those two specific groups of people. One, the school kids who need this service to actually attend the school distance learning, and the other one would be to see if there's anything the county can do to incentivize the private sector providers to do a better job of providing this service to people who live on the outlying areas. There's always this problem with profitability, which I think I understand from the private sector. They're not willing to invest a lot of money on providing these services to very few customers out in the county. But it's still, though, any customer out in the county that needs to work from home, it's almost impossible for them to work from home. I got a call from a grandmother who said their grandkids wouldn't want to go to their house because they had no Wi-Fi. I mean, it's just getting to a point now where it was impacting way beyond. I think that we've been working on the broadband issue for years, and I think the intent was more economic development at the time we started dealing with this. It was more like, okay, getting that fiber optic service all the way to San Luis, to the industrial park, people out there. This is more a plan that focuses on improving services for students, improving services for people who, in some ways, are now placed in a situation where they have to work from home and they basically can't. I mean, I know there's hotspots, there's a lot of tools, but there's maybe some tools that can be used to temporarily resolve that problem until we can get the federal government to invest the kind of monies that it would take to really improve the situation in a permanent way. Meanwhile, I've asked Paul to come up with some options where we can step in and assist, in this case, the private sector, to be able to provide those services to people in the outlying areas, students or schools, and or simple service to residents out in the outlying area, improvements to the service to residents in the outlying area. Paul?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that introduction and covering that for me. Paul Melcher, Director of Economic Development and Intergovernmental Affairs. I'd also, I have a couple disclaimers before we start. As Supervisor Reyes was mentioning, one of the things that we've taken a look at is kind of the COVID response, but this looks at COVID also not from an immediate response, but also talking about what do we do during the pandemic and after the pandemic as part of a preparation for any other interruptions in service or school that might occur. The other thing is the information I'm providing today is not necessarily engineered. I'm not an engineer. I don't know all of the ins and outs of broadband services, but what I wanted to do was complement all of the providers I've been working with to give me the information, to give me the groundwork that we could begin to start these discussions. As we move forward and have the information, one of the things I really would recommend is that whatever the board chooses to do, there would be a subsequent study looking at how the engineering works on this, working with the providers to get the specific quotes, those kind of things, because in some instances, we're looking at ranges here, and that's what much of my information provides, is simply let's talk about a range, how this might work in theory, and then we could continue those discussions as a county with those providers moving forward. So my report is included in 3 separate sections today. The first one is talking about, as Chairman Reyes mentioned, remote learning and support for schools. The second one is underserved rural areas and ag operations. And the next one is addressing signal strength in cities, towns, and census data designated places. When we talk about the short term, one of the areas of focus was looking at making sure that any infrastructure investments, we had a certain expectation of a return, that we didn't want to make an investment that would be soon obsolete. So as I looked at how we could support schools, two things came to mind. Is a lot of households might have fixed line service, but they're just not either able to afford it or for some other reason don't have access to that service. So we figure the best service is those that have fixed lines, so they can have the direct service into the home, have the highest speeds possible to that service. The other one is mobile hotspots. So as we move forward with this, I contacted all the schools and asked them for those areas, for those addresses for the students who either didn't already have connected to the household for fixed wireless or didn't already have a hotspot. So the priority was to get the students connected to a household fiber or, direct internet hookup. And for those students who didn't have access to that, we would then look to hotspots. So in the short term, my initial recommendation would include a grant program that has a base floor of $150,000 that would cover expenses for 6 months. I say a base floor now because as I've been working through this, we've had another return of students to homebound schooling. So as we look at that, I'm going to re-examine that to see what that range might be. Based on the initial information that I was able to gather, $150,000 should cover that first set of students, but as we move forward, there might be additional students that would be discovered by the schools that could apply directly to the county, and so I'll be adjusting that figure. From a long-term situation, I came up with 3 general discussion points. The first one is point-to-point. So at what point-to-point means is that you typically have a fiber connection somewhere and you broadcast a signal from tower to tower. If there's a situation that could occur in one of the schools, that might be beneficial in order to make sure that they have access to high-speed internet. The real challenge with the point-to-point is that sometimes you don't really have a lot of redundancy. You have to build that into the system, because if you broadcast out to one end of the point and something happens, then you might lose connection with all the rest of the points from which you're broadcasting. So there are some limitations with that, but that might be a good way to get signal out to a remote area versus having to run fiber along the entire way of a street or road. The next one is a private virtual network. Several communities and schools in Texas, what they've done is they've taken the school and they've erected towers on the school and broadcast a secured wireless signal for all the students to attach to that. So in theory, what you're really looking at is a school setting up this highly secured area where they can control all the content coming in and out, but you're allowing students to connect. As we've seen in Yuma, most of the students have wireless capable iPads already that have been distributed instead of textbooks. So that makes a lot of sense. In this case, what you're really looking here is you might have 1 or 2 towers per school that would broadcast the signal out. Typically, you're looking at a coverage area of about 1 mile. You're looking at approximately $300,000 for each tower, with about $20,000 in equipment, and then you just have the monthly maintenance for the Wi-Fi, internet signal that would be coming in. So you're looking, somewhere around $400,000 to $600,000 to set up that private virtual network. However, that could be operable at any time. So any time that there is a need to have that, the schools could utilize that, and it could be utilized also year-round for those students who need Wi-Fi access for homework and the other considerations. So not only COVID.
Now, are we talking about a situation where a school can actually say, for example, if they wanted to hold on school schooling, they would be able to set it up at their gym or, in an open area, outside or anything, and everybody would be connected through the internal private network? Is that what we're talking about?
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you. That's the segue into the next part, is that Learning Assistance Center. So when you look at the ability of that private virtual network and these centers, you could have schools that could set up, let's say a school wanted to use the Civic Center or some other large facility that's not being utilized as a learning center. They could do that as well, or they could use a gymnasium or something located on site. So really that's the design, to have the school locally broadcast a smaller area for the Wi-Fi. So you could use that in tandem, or you could use those separately. The assistance center would be mostly used for those schools that couldn't provide would want to provide internet service for those students who might not already have it at a household.
All right.
When you look at that, that one is in the tens of thousands of dollars because that's, there's not a lot of infrastructure that would be required for the schools. But when you're looking at the point-to-point and the private virtual network, that's where you're getting into some significantly higher infrastructure costs. Section 2, we're talking about the underserved areas that Chairman Reyes was referencing. One of the things that occurred as part of this discussion about the underserved areas that I'll talk about is some long and some short-term recommendations based on my further discussions with the ag community and what it might look like in the future for the development of their operations. One of the things that I've been looking at here is called a fixed wireless tower system. Along Avenue B in the next 60 days, it's anticipated that there's going to be fiber optic access along Avenue B. We've identified this area between County 16th Street and County 18th Street from B to Avenue 4E as an area which is likely to be underserved. I'll show you a tool that we've been using to identify underserved areas in a little bit to see, but what the premise here is that we could pull from that fiber there, create 1 or 2 towers depending on what is necessary to create a system there, and you could broadcast high-speed wireless internet from those towers as you could get that coverage area. The advantages here is you wouldn't have to build expensive fiber, it already is there. The county would have to rent that, which might be a 10-year lease or something like that. We're still looking at the terms. And the county would have an initial expense on the towers, but there also might be some co-investment. As Chairman Reyes was mentioning earlier, we talked about the financial aspects of this. I mentioned co-investment to say that the operator might look and say, okay, well, if the county will make this investment in this infrastructure, this amount, and if we understand that we would get this many customers, then the other provider might also provide an investment to offset some of those expenses. Another one is mobile wireless internet concept. I'm going to begin with this tower up here. In Somerton, that's at the Somerton Airport. So it's a wireless tower fixture there. I've denoted a 5-mile radius in terms of coverage. Right now, tower coverage is between 5 and 10 miles, but as we understand, you also have a degradation of system as you move out away from that tower coverage. So I just wanted to show in general that we could get this area covered with this tower by leasing a quadrant that's unused from the provider. The towers don't broadcast in a circular signal. The only way I could depict it was to kind of show it in a circle, but it's more of a 120-degree radius that it broadcasts, so it has different quadrants around the tower from which it's broadcasting all sides. So when you look at it this way, we could take a fixed, very focused approach to, if we know there's an area that's deficient of high-speed internet, and lease that tower. I wanted to show it from the aspect also of there are 2 other towers in this area, so going again by that 5-mile radius discussion just in general, how much coverage you could get from these 2 towers. And I'm still working out the terms of the lease and what that looks like, but if the county could lease this from a provider for about $200,000 to $250,000, that might be another cost-effective way of looking at it in comparison with that fixed wireless solution. The long-term one, when we talk to ag and we look at the rural access, one of the things that becomes apparent is much of the grant money from USDA and other sources actually focuses on rural access, but not improving farm operations. So if we could tie that together, one of the discussion points that came up that would cure both of these, and again as a long-term solution, because you can see you're roughly at 120 miles of fiber runs, is to create backbone fiber throughout the Yuma Valley, Yuma Mesa, Gila Valley, and the Mohawk Valleys. And what the concept here is that in identified points for service, you would have towers extending off of this to make sure that the residents and the ag operations were getting sufficient service to ensure that any mechanization, any robotics, all of those advanced high-tech features would have access to internet 100% of the time with 100% of signal strength. So that's the reason why there's such an extensive fiber run throughout all of the counties. And arguably it's a $20 to $24 million project. But that's just something that we talked about if we're looking at a long-term solution versus the short-term solutions from the mobile cell or the fixed tower cellular, this might be something to continue the discussions. Part of the things that makes this so interesting in terms of a final solution or a proposed solution, I wanted to show the board just, we have some tools at the county, so I can show at any time, these are all the cell sites in Yuma County. I drew a 2-mile buffer around all the cell sites just to give you a sense of, that's what the coverage is at 2 miles. When you extend it out to 5 and 10 miles, you really show the fact that in most areas, if we could talk about enhancing the signal and do some proof of concept aspects of looking at this, that might be a good solution for everywhere. If you can look at the cell tower as a solution, a cell tower typically costs $600,000 to $1 million to construct. So if you could do, it depends on how those could be strategically placed, but that might be an alternative to having to run fiber throughout all of the valley and the farm areas. Amelia, if you could also show that. Thank you. So another way I referenced earlier, this is another tool that we can use to identify areas where there is substandard service. So Amelia, if you just click on any of those pieces, yep, just click right there. So what this does, this tool shows you, this is a federal communications tool that shows you which providers are located in this area and what the speeds they're providing. So what I was able to do is take a look at this and figure out and make those initial recommendations based on what does the tower strength look like, what does the broadband internet access look like, and then we can start using that tool. So as the board prioritizes areas, you have a good sense of what might be located there. This gives you an initial look. It doesn't obviously show household by household what the access looks like, but that's when you can get down into the more specific discussions with the providers and then start coming up with engineered solutions based on all this information. Thank you, Amelia. That's okay. Yep, right there. Thank you. So one of the other objectives that Chairman Reyes had mentioned was taking a look at signal strength in certain areas. We know that oftentimes that was the complaint, and prior to a couple of years ago when actually a group of broadband, it was a wireless communications team went and actually spoke directly with the providers to get signal strengths increased to make sure that they understood that if they're promising a certain speed that they had to deliver it. So one of the things that we're looking here is the same thing with high-speed internet is these fixed and mobile services. So for fixed lines, we know that there are some providers who still have some copper within their system. So they have fiber up to a node. The nodes are the lead for the distribution system, and those nodes are distributing copper to the households. So if we can limit the distance from the node to the house by eliminating and increasing the amount of fiber up to the node, that's one way to do that. It does become expensive because fiber runs typically cost between $50,000 and $130,000 per mile, plus you'd have the cost of fiber to run to each house. So that might be a little bit cost prohibitive, but at least it's an option to discuss. It was encouraging to hear that several of the providers, particularly in the Welton area, are converting their copper lines to fiber as they go along. And in fact, it's anticipated that TACNA, as it moves forward right now, it's under wireless high-speed internet, that as it converts over, that'll be direct fiber to each one of the houses. So I think as a long-term solution, that really makes sense, and it would be interesting to see that Welton and TACNA might be far ahead of some of the other communities in terms of having fiber to the house. It's also worth mentioning that for the new developments, it would be depending on what that provider chooses, but a lot of the newer developments are going to have fiber to the house already as part of the cost of development. These are some of the areas where this internet speeds are slower or they're underserved areas. The real challenge as we look at this was Martinez Lake. Chairman Reyes asked specifically, as I said, for some of the census designated places. Martinez Lake is a particular challenge because the fiber ends at YPG along Martinez Lake Road. So you're looking at 6 to 8 miles of fiber there. If we go again at $50,000 at least minimum to run the fiber there, it seems to be a very expensive proposition. Also, it's very difficult to get a wireless signal all the way out there. So at this time, it seems as though the best use is satellite high-speed internet. But that's one of those long-term projects that could be analyzed just to take a look to see what that might make sense in the future. One of the really other aspects of when we look at the underserved areas is that point-to-point where you could get towers broadcasting a signal and distribute through a fiber line at the end, or you could look at those cell tower or fixed cell tower broadcast instances. The real key here is when we look at the discussion with those providers is identifying fiber. It's interesting that we have a lot more internet providers down here that are installing fiber, so keeping up to speed with those maps and keeping those current will be important in looking at serving those underserved areas. The other advantage we have is consumers are transitioning from 5G, that the 4G service down below will become faster because you have a less pull on that signal. So that'll take a little bit of a transition because those 5G users will have to transition over into 5G compatible phones. However, as part of the ag use, 4G speeds would be sufficient, at least at the moment, to help support a lot of their operations. And if you can broadcast that 4G signal with greater strength out in those rural areas, that might be a good way to also entertain some hotspots and to address some of those service issues there. So Mr. Chair and members of the board, in short, I have several recommendations for you. The first one is to complete the evaluation of that remote learning grant. I would say it's 90% complete, going back to take a look at what additional students might be needed to add to that list. I would say to the board, I was remiss in not including that this was a list of students throughout the entire county. So this included everything in Mohawk Valley in terms of the Antelope School District, Mohawk Valley, and all the way north to South County. So this was a comprehensive analysis, not just one school district. One of the things that Chairman Reyes had mentioned was the questions about remote work, and I think that would be a great survey to work in cooperation with GYDC or the Chamber to see if there are any issues that employers are having with internet capabilities, remote learning, work, to figure out if that's either becoming a financial burden or if it's just an issue of we need the access to be able to make this work. One of the real challenges here, I think, in the short term is just getting the engineering and having some more specific estimates for the fixed tower and the cell tower. So I think you continue that to figure out which one seems to be the best solution, and then look to see how that might work in number 4 in terms of your priorities and setting up some of those goals and objectives. The last one I put down was something that I included in the report as well, is pushing for broadband legislation. One of the things that we've talked about is that now it's the ubiquitous nature of what broadband has become. It's not covered by the Arizona Corporation Commission. It's really transitioned over from cable TV now to an essential aspect of utility for everybody's lives, but it's not covered like a utility per se. So I have several recommendations in there for the broadband. I'll cover those again in the federal priorities, but one of those is we really need to look at a community or look at a nation in establishing some minimum standards for what broadband speeds would be provided to residences. The long one is, as I mentioned at the first slide, we had some possibilities to be able to partner with the schools to talk about either the point-to-point systems or the private virtual networks. If the county would so choose, I think that's a great place to continue that discussion for some long-term. We talk, and I'll go back a little bit to the economic development. We speak about workforce and skills, and we understand that we want to make sure that our students are being educated. And I think that's also a consideration for investment, not only for the community, but for economic development as well. And then the other thing is, I would really recommend at this point as we move forward to have some kind of pilot program or proof of concept with the ag community and providers to determine what meets their current needs, but what looks like the future needs as well. Ag is, undoubtedly it's the biggest industry in the county, but it also addresses some of these things that we've talked about at the beginning about pre-COVID, addressing COVID, and then what comes after COVID in terms of broadband. Mr. Chair, that completes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Paul, you always sort of, and it's tough for me to say that you leave me speechless, but this has been a pretty extensive presentation. I think, I don't think anyone here on this board knew that much about broadband and its issues and, the challenges. And obviously I was, and I'm still trying to get some help to the school districts and trying to figure out a way to get more. I mean, it's a big issue for me. But obviously what we've gotten here is a presentation about short-term and long-term. And I think that you cover them extremely well as far as I'm concerned. And as I've told you, because I know you gave me that presentation earlier, this is not to me the time we were talking about long-term solutions, but it's a good segue into talking about short-term solutions to a problem that may or may not be available or may not be as harsh 6 months from now. But what it would do is it would improve the school systems in a way that if we have another issue like we're having right now, they'll be ready to deal with it. I know that their system is designed to get help from the state. But I also know that the wheels of government move very slow, and this is a problem that we're experiencing right now. So as I see the need to help small businesses, sort of stay afloat and so forth, I also see that the school districts are having a tough time with this distance learning or teaching. And I thought it would be a great way to show that as a county, we're looking at our students, we're looking at our school districts, and we're trying to figure out ways to help them with that huge task they got on their hands. Having said that, I know Supervisor McLeod always has something to say, so.
You're going to miss me. Well, first, Paul, excellent presentation, as usual. I wanted to acknowledge this will be your last meeting with us, and you'll be sorely missed. This kind of work it's going to be hard to find somebody to replace the level of attention and detail that you place on these types of projects. So thank you for all of the great work you've done for us over the years and for this excellent presentation. I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah.
And congratulations on your new opportunity. I know you'll do well. And Mr. Chairman, are we looking to approve this budget today?
Yeah, well, what I was looking at is once the presentation was given, I wanted to have short-term and long-term issues to discuss. I think you brought them forth. There's still a point, and I think can you get back to the recommendations on short-term? Because I think that what I was looking at is I was looking to see if the board was interested or would support a program to support the schools during this period of time, during the first 6 months or the next 6 months, and whether you would be willing to place a certain amount of money available to make available to schools to help them solve these issues. And I think that in our pocket, there was a sort of like a budget. It's not a total budget because obviously it's going to require analysis, further analysis, but make that grant available to schools, make that fund available to schools so that they can proceed in trying to resolve some of the issues that have already been identified. Specifically for some, there are simply more issues in some areas than others, and I can tell just from the budget. But making this funding available to schools will go, I think, a long ways in helping them solve the problem as opposed to trying to get the state to come in, try to get the Department of Education to acknowledge this problem. This is, to me, a sort of a quick fix to a problem we will continue having for a while. I don't see COVID-19 numbers going down to allow them to get back to even a hybrid, system of education. So this, to me, makes funding available to them, and it's not a large amount of money. It's not a large amount of money individually for some of the school districts, but to them, they have budget restraints. Sometimes they just can't handle it like that. Even if it's $20,000, if it's not in their budget, they just simply don't have the ability to move. So making this funding available to school districts at this particular time, to me, seemed like a good idea in terms of helping the community out there deal with one of the areas that is gone to a point where help is needed.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, if I could just clarify, and before that, thank you so much. It's really been, I would say you're welcome because I love learning and you guys have provided me all the opportunities ever to look at all these special projects and to learn. You look at the scope of having gone through paved road maintenance, gravel road maintenance, all the way up to this. I've got a full breadth of that. But when you look at it today, the budget that I included wasn't for approval yet. It was just simply to show you what the work had been so far. at the point where we started looking at that budget, that's before all the schools again started going to more remote learning and had transitioned over to less to the hybrid. And now, so I would say if you could allow this to go to the next board meeting, my anticipation would be that we could get something presented to the board at that time, a more comprehensive budget, and then have the board act on it at that time.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Supervisor Simmons.
I just had a question. Have you looked anywhere out towards Dateland? I know you said Mohawk.
Right.
Have we looked at Dateland? And I was just wondering if you haven't, I don't know how far Maricopa comes out, if they go all the way out to Sentinel School, because they're a lot closer. They're the closest school to Dateland. If I know Dateland doesn't have it, but if we can piggyback off any system they might have to get Dateland into the mix.
Thank you. I can't recall exactly all the addresses that were included for the Mohawk Valley out to Dateland. I'll double check that, but I'll also double check to see what Sentinel might have, see what that is.
Just like I said, it's just.
Well, it might be Cox or something that discussion, but.
You know, and I know you want to say something, so I'll get back to you in a minute. But I think I brought this up September the 7th of this year. You know, you do have attached as one of the specific components of the report an estimated budget for a county grant program for remote learning support in the amount of $150,000. You put that in there, which led me to believe that we could do something relatively soon. This is not, you know, I hate putting things off that can be sort of made a decision on. The way it's listed here, it's listed in a way that we can take action. And I know that you haven't, or there hasn't been, the budget hasn't been defined, but you gave us a range. And all we have to do is, you know, make a motion to set aside, you know, a budget of $150,000 to a county grant program for remote learning support. The only issue I have is whether we can actually do that under the statutes, under the law. And this wouldn't be a gift, wouldn't run afoul of the gift clause. And so maybe that's what we need. We need to review this, get it through legal first before we make a decision on setting it up. That I think would be wise to do, because everything we seem to do has to go through legal. So I think that the budget you gave us was around the $50,000, somewhere around that $50,000.
150.
Oh, what I'm saying is the budget that was in, well, the budget I have here.
150, 148 and some change, I think.
Really? Yeah. Then I didn't look at it that way. All right. Yeah, that was 43,000 for just one. That's right. Okay, so that's the budget that we have right now. The issues to me was first find out if there was enough support of the board to move forward. Second is to set up a budget. Third is to find out if there's any legal issues with setting up a budget, setting up a grant program, and whether that runs afoul, whether we have to, like we did before, you know, if we set up a program to help small businesses, we have to do it through another nonprofit entity. So I'm not sure exactly how the mechanics of that would work. Would it be that we make available to the school districts this funding? I don't know the details yet of that. I don't know how to work that out. Susan, maybe you have some ideas.
Mr. Chairman, I've been looking at some of the proposals and possibilities, and pretty much none of them would probably run into a gifts clause problem.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Good. So we could, theoretically speaking, you know, take action on this item and have it be worked, you know, worked through, knowing that if something, you know, doesn't work or something, we can always go back and fine tune it. I'd like to get something going, and waiting for the last meeting of December didn't really appeal to me. It's been a few months now, and I think the problem is imminent, and I'd like to start working on it right away, if we could, if the board, you know, if the board decides to go ahead and support it. Supervisor McLeod?
Paul, undoubtedly, as you go back and look at this, the budget will increase, no doubt. Is that your anticipation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and Supervisor McLeod. My concern would be at this point that the 150,000 assumed these were the students who were choosing to participate as part of the hybrid. I would estimate that there would be, you know, to increase the budget to account for the possibility that there would be additional students that might go through this analysis and still need, you know, better internet access.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, my motion would be that so we can get the ball rolling, that we approve the budget put in front of us today at $150,000 with the understanding that there will be most likely an increase, but at least this way we can get it through legal, and we've got a foundation that the board can build on going forward. So that would be my motion.
Right. There's been a motion. Before we second on that, and the reason I wanted the health department here is because they have a very good working relationship with the school district. I asked Tom, I asked if it was possible for Tom to be here because, you know, it's kind of tough to be working on a situation where you want to help someone who may not necessarily know or feel like, okay, you know, they understand they have needs. They may not realize that there's a way to deal with them outside the normal, you know, funding sources that they deal with. So I wanted to make sure that the health department, again, you know, because they have such a close relationship with the school, would be sort of like the liaison. Tom and the health department would sort of work with them in making sure they understand what we're trying to do here. So $150,000 budget to be set aside, to be used as needed. And really, that is the point that we're making right now. And if need to be adjusted, that we come back and adjust it in a future date based. But I want the school districts to know this is done on an emergency basis and a fast basis so that they can actually implement some methodology there that helps the students get through this particularly difficult period of time. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to do what I just said. Is there any more discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Now, I do want some details of where the money's gonna come from for the next meeting, just to make sure that we know, you know, where we're getting the money, where, you know, where it's coming from, okay?
Who was the second?
I think it was Supervisor Simmons.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Paul, and, you know, Autobala's gain is our loss. All right, the next item in the, thank you, Health Department people and Emergency Management people for staying around.
Thanks.
The next item is the Planning and Zoning agenda. Full legal descriptions of property size for all rezoning cases are available for public review at the Yuma County Board of Supervisors office. The first item, and these are full presentations, these are rezoning regular public hearing items. And the first one is Development Service Planning and Zoning Division minor amendment case, number 2004, Ibrahim Hosman, agent for Jesus N. and Sara R. Ramirez, Trust 12-1-98, request to change the land use designation of a parcel 4,247 square feet in size and a 500 square foot portion of a parcel 38,388 square feet in size from medium density residential to business park on assessors parcels number 759-29-058, a portion of 091 and a portion of 092 located at 18860 South Main Street, Gadsden, Arizona. Before you begin, this is tied to the rezoning case.
Yes,
So I'm going to open them both at the same time. I don't think that the second one works without getting the first one done. So I'm just gonna open it up so we can do discussion and open up public hearing on both. Ibrahim Oman, agent for Jesus N. and Sara Ramirez, requests the rezoning of a parcel 4,247 square feet in size, a 500 square foot portion of a parcel 6,498 square feet in size, and a 500 square foot portion of a parcel 38,388 square feet in size from low density residential 6,000 square feet minimum to general commercial, and the rezoning of a 6,000 square foot portion of a parcel 6,498 square feet in size and a 37,888 square foot portion of a parcel 38,388 square feet in size from light industrials of C2, assessors parcel number 759-29-058, 091 and 092 located at 18860 South Main Street, Gadsden, Arizona. I suppose that was because there were some parcels that were supposed to be united. Is that correct? In other words, we're trying to consolidate a couple of parcels into one parcel. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So, okay. So the floor is yours, Mr. Rubio.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that. Juan Leal Rubio, Senior Planner with the Planning and Zoning Division. The property is located in the Yuma Valley Planning Area, and the address is 18860 South Main Street in Gadsden, and the intent of the minor amendment is to accommodate the rezoning of the properties from R16 to light industrial to C2. This is the vicinity map, and everything that you said there is actually described here on the properties that are crosshatched. So it's portions of parcels. The intent here is to change the portion of parcel 91 and parcel 58 to color blue, which is the business park land use designation that supports the C2 zoning district.
This is a picture of the property looking north. And we received no comments in support nor in opposition. And the staff is recommending approval of this minor amendment because the amendment is consistent with the existing character of the Yuma Valley planning area, because the amendment will be an overall improvement to the plan, because it will ensure development occurs in a coordinated, contiguous, and comprehensive manner, and the amendment is in character with the existing land uses and support policies of the plan to provide consistent land uses. I'll go on to the rezoning. You describe all that's there. So again, it's in the Yuma Valley planning area. The intent of the rezoning is to accommodate a automobile sales lot.
Okay.
This is the vicinity map, and crosshatch is what is intended to be rezoned from light industrial and R16 to C2. And surrounding the property in yellow, we have property that are zoned R16. It's a mixture of site-built homes and manufactured homes. Further north, we have property zone C2. I believe it's a vacant lot, had a little office on it. And to the south, we have property zone RA40 in ag. To the east, we have properties 49, 52, 51, and 50, some site-built homes and agricultural activities taking place. This is the aerial imagery. I can see what I just described. And this is the preliminary layout of the what is intended to be intended on the property, which is the car sales lot. It'll be an improvement, definitely. Looking west from Main Street at the property, looking south from 7th Avenue. This is looking north from Colorado Street, the residential district, west of the property, and north. And we received a comment from Roberta McDermott. She's actually concerned with making sure that the drainage of the property is retained on the property, and that engineering will ensure that all that happens. We received no other comments in support or in opposition. We are recommending approval of this rezoning case and with the following performance conditions: that they provide the AR 121130 waiver and that record an agriculture disclosure statement. And that concludes staff's presentation. Any questions?
You know, not so much a question as a comment. I mean, we're dealing with the minor amendment first, which is what we are doing right now. Before we go into a public hearing portion of the minor amendment, you have already given us an explanation of what the intended use for the property would be. I've been going by there for a long time, and I was hoping something would happen to it because it is a corner and it is next to the traffic signal, and because it is deteriorated over time. And so having something be done with that corner is actually something I'm looking forward to. And I want to thank Maggie for moving the process forward, because we were contacted by the owner asking that, you know, we take care of this process as expediently as possible, because of obviously he wanted to get, you know, the actual construction going for the lot, for the auto lot. So thank you very much for bringing it. I know it took a little bit of time to coordinate everything so you can get it in front of us this morning. So thank you very much for that effort. Does anybody have any questions for the staff before I open it to the public hearing? If not, I'm going to open it to the public. This will open the public hearing process of the minor amendment case number 2002. Is anybody here representing the agent that wants to address the board? Don't have to. You know, I always remember telling everyone, you know, be careful. If you're ahead, you want to quit while you're ahead. So, you know, not to discourage anybody making any comments, but that is the way it is. So I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this and bring it back to the board for their decision. So I'll entertain a motion for a minor amendment case number 2004.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second to approve minor amendment case number 2004 as discussed and as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission staff. Anyone has any comments? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The motion carries. Now we go to Development Service, Planning and Zoning Division. This will be rezoning case number 2016. The same applies, the same presentation, the same issues, the same recommendations. I will open up a public hearing for rezoning case number 2016. Anybody in the public that wants to address the board? If not, I'll close the public hearing portion of this and bring it back to the board for their action.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve as presented.
Rezoning case number 2016, there's been a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
There's a second to approve the presentation as presented. Anybody has any comments or discussion items to bring forward? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. You haven't had a case this simple for a long time. Thank you. All right, so we move on to the last item, I think, on the board, which is event calendar, current events. Board members and county administration will report on or may discuss event attended or to be attended on behalf of the county, may present a brief summary of current events, and may update the schedule for future Board of Supervisors meeting as appropriate.
You have legislative issues.
We do?
Yeah. One,
Mm-hmm.
discussion of possible action regarding,
Whoa, I did skip one, right? Item number one. I went to item number one on
The
event
legislature.
calendar, but we have a legislative issue item. I'm sorry, you got carried away. Everything was going so well, but then I forgot. There is Paul. So there's discussion regarding legislative issues, and number one is county administration discussion and possible action regarding the following legislative items. I'll take back this item where we were doing board calendar of events and move into item number one, which is a report of the Board of Supervisors regarding proposed bills in the Arizona State Legislature with impact to Yuma County, and update regarding strategies relating to federal legislative priorities. Paul?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Paul Melcher, Director of Economic Development and Intergovernmental Affairs. Mr. Chairman, before you today is the consideration, and I'll run through them quickly individually, your consideration for your federal legislative agenda for next year. This will be what we've been taking the talking points to the congressional visits on the Hill during the NACO conferences, and then also what we've been using to generate the resolutions for the NACO policy action items each year. So, Mr. Chairman, starting again with PILT. PILT's been a reoccurring item since we started putting together these talking points. We still don't have a defined long-term source for that, so I'd propose keeping that as one of the items. SCAP is, again, I think it's been on there as long as PILT has. One of our concerns is that we still, each funding cycle, we're still funded at that, below 10% level. So we'd like to see that we get complete reimbursement for that. The next one, we've been continuing to work with the efficient, timely crossing of vehicles. We know that there was $152 million that was appropriated with about a $90 million balance. We'd like to see that in addition to the 152 that was appropriated, that the 90 million gets appropriated this year so it can be considered as one complete project and not go out to bid in pieces and then increase the project costs. The next one, we have been working about the last 4 years for the ozone transport regulations. We know that's going to be a tough haul just because of we're not sure what the new administration is going to take in terms of their appetite for the possible amendments to the Clean Air Act. But as we've moved through that, we've got our ozone non-attainment area back to maintenance and attainment. Now we want to make sure that we're looking forward to making ensuring that Yuma won't be subject to the additional whims of being out of non-attainment and attainment in rapid succession.
But before you leave that, I think that the first thing we need to do is educate the incoming senator from Arizona and their sitting senator from Arizona about how important those issues are to us. They may feel a little bit pressured not to mess with the EPA, but in this particular situation, they're supposed to be representing us. I know they're doing it at a national level, but this is a big issue for us. And I think it's an understandable argument that we make, a real easy to understand argument about the location and all those factors that come into play. That I think it shouldn't be too hard to at least get them to support, to push our project forward. We may be able to get a waiver or something that doesn't impact, everyone in the nation. This is a pretty specific, circumstantial location, geographically location-based argument. I don't think it has a lot to do with being in Michigan. Well, I shouldn't use Michigan. They're another border area. Or Illinois or whatever it is in the middle of the country. So just making sure that the new senator gets updated with this and that he understands what the issue is before he hears it from somebody else.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And one of the key things, and I didn't really talk about the strategies behind each, is you're right. One of the long-term strategies that I would recommend is we get the Arizona delegation together in one shot and have one meeting based on that to have the discussion, because as you were referencing, this is just not an Arizona specific, it's not Yuma specific. There are 20 other states around the nation that have other areas that suffer the same transport issues as does Yuma. So I think that's really critical, is because we know that one of our local representatives sits on the House, excuse me, Public Works and Environmental Committee. So that's part of the education process. I think if Representative Grijalva and that staff go through that education process, have that discussion, and then really formulate some strategy moving forward would be very helpful.
It's gonna be tough, but needs to be done.
Mr. Chairman, number 5 was the restoring health benefits to the pretrial individuals. At our last Hill visit, this was the first time we'd introduced it. I know that all the representatives with whom we spoke at the time were very supportive of this. This is one of those unfortunate bills that had just simply died because of the lack of momentum created by the COVID pandemic. So I think if it moves forward, as it looks like it might be reintroduced, or if it gains new life, that was one of the things that we wanted to support, was certainly making sure that those pretrial health benefits were in place for those individuals.
Paul, may I suggest that, in lieu of us traveling to Washington, D.C. and making these points to our representatives, that we set up some sort of a Zoom meeting, some sort of an internet meeting around those dates where we're prepared to, as a board or representatives of the board, address these issues with this. We don't have to wait until March, but I'd say that what we want to do is put the issues of Yuma County in front of those representatives by themselves, and not necessarily by doing them in person, but still I think it would have an impact if some of us took up some of those issues and discussed them with our legislators at the federal level so that we get some attention placed on this. I don't think this is the time to back off from pressuring them into helping us solve this problem.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. Number 6 was the federal funding for the permanent relocation of the fairgrounds. I will state briefly that there will be an Arizona push again. In general, that at the state legislature, Representative Dunn has already voiced his support that he'll be looking to reintroduce a bill to secure what we'd consider kind of the grant match portion of this. Even though we're moving toward a more federal solution to this through the National Defense Authorization Act or through a direct appropriation, we still want to have that $5 to $10 million to look at property, securing a site, or at least showing the federal government that we have kind of a grant match to apply toward this, that we have skin in the game, so to speak, and that there is a community effort, and that we've already established that, yes, we understand that, as this moves forward, we already have a contribution, but we're still looking for that federal solution. Mr. Chair, number 7 is the newest proposal I'd like to put in front of the board. This talks about the broadband funding. One of the things that I've encountered as I've looked at broadband grants over the last several years is that it's very difficult to do a sizable project because it's almost impossible to tie federal sources together or to do phased projects. You can't really count on receiving grant funding year after year because EDA and other administrative portions of the grants who are administering it look at areas and they say, okay, well, if we get some money in this area, let's focus on other areas. So there's not really a cohesive funding source that you could look at to say if we wanted to do a larger project that we could count on continual funding for several years. One of the real main points of emphasis then in terms of these talking points is the block grant aspect of this. We've been talking through the Arizona Commerce Authority with their state broadband director and other resources to take a look at this and advocate for block grants to the communities. The communities can of course, follow their own plans. We've talked about the long-range fiber master plan for our region just here briefly. But we also, if we have some local plans by the county, that would be a great source of revenue to take a look at that. And then you could count on the block grants as a consistent fiscal funding cycle and source to be able to do and accomplish some of these larger projects. Some of the other things that I didn't add on here yet that came from that report was looking at some minimum standards for broadband. We understand that right now the FCC looks at 25 megabits per second as the minimum that a person would need to really be able to use broadband, but that also is based on 2015 broadband usage statistics. We know that the technology doubles and triples every couple years, the streaming, all the other aspects of high-speed internet that consumers are relying on, that, 25 megabits per second doesn't begin to cover that. You're already looking at the standards probably closer to 50 megabits per second. And that's what we're really looking at and focusing on as an underserved area. If we want all the residents in the United States to participate, not only in e-commerce, but remote learning, the other aspects of whatever they're using the internet for, they need to have a certain expectation and access to that internet level service. So that's what we're really pushing forward in these talking points. Mr. Chair, that concludes the first 7. I'd stop at this point just to ask if the board has any questions or comments or recommendations.
No, I think we need to keep them alive, but more than just keep them alive, we need to refresh them with our congressional delegation. After the election is done and after everything is settled, we need to refresh those and just simply go at them again. The only comment that I would probably make is sometimes it works much better if you focus on 1 or 2 of them, the most likely to get accomplished, as opposed to, all 7 of them at the same time. We may have to have a secondary meeting and discuss the possibility of what do we really want to focus on so that we can actually put that in front of those representatives as an issue that is of overriding importance to us that we can't leave aside. For example, the PILT funding or maybe the relocation of the fairgrounds. We could put that on a defense bill type situation as it impacts the military, things. Yeah, I mean, we do that with CSA when we go through our legislative priorities. We sort of say, okay, well, we can't put everything up because, we don't know, but maybe we need to ask our representatives, which one can you champion? And then have them move the process forward to a point where we can do something about it, because otherwise it's just one of those wish lists that people provide them all the time. And then, we provide them the wish list and then we keep pressuring them about all 7 of them. And, normally we don't get much of an answer. I mean, we've been pushing pills for, 20 years or 25 years, 20, whatever, however long I've been here. I can remember 22 or 20 something. So we need to start looking at taking one of them and saying, okay, we want this one solved this year. Not, we don't want to bring it in next year. SCAP. I mean, that issue, every time we bring it up, we have to describe it because they don't know about it. Yeah. It's such a small, it's such a small program that it escapes their attention. We have to bring it up every time. Otherwise, they just erase it from the budget. Things like the $90 million for the City of San Luis port of entry. Those issues are really, those are issues that I'm sure that if we put them together in a way, we could say, okay, Senator Kelly or something, can you spearhead this, or Senator Sinema or Raul Grijalva or somebody, just give it to them and say, we'd like you to push this, get us an answer, work for us, right? Anything else, guys?
Well, Mr. Chair, I got a comment. I just wanted to say that for Mark Kelly's, Senator Mark Kelly's team, we have a native from Somerton that's his
Part of his team?
Yeah, so.
What's his, who?
Luis.
Oh, Heredia?
Yeah. So he'll be the director here in Arizona.
All right. Well,
so
maybe we can
Luis?
get him to work on.
Mm-hmm.
Luis did. Yeah. Maybe we can get him to work on some of our issues if we give him a couple, as opposed to giving him 7. It may work. I mean, it seems to me we have this list that almost always is the same. And everything, we changed it a little bit. Like last time we went after the visa program, the H-2A visa program.
Mr. Chair, thank you. That's a good segue into the last one for the feds.
All right.
So, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to give you an update. This is really not the opportunity to approve anything, but as we had worked last year on the Farm Workforce Modernization Act of 2019, that was another one of those that kind of died. I shouldn't say it like that. The bill lacked any support moving forward. After all the momentum that we were able to push forward in working out some resolutions, as I described it, we were able to sit down with the local Farm Bureau and with Western growers and several of those representatives and get some of this ironed out. The last remaining portion of this is the National Farm Bureau hasn't adopted this as its legislative take on this bill. So I would just keep an eye on this one and as we move forward and track it, because it might even come back in pieces. with a new administration looking at immigration in a different way, you might have it come forward in, in several different ways, and it might not be as one act a total. But I think it's just worth mentioning that I'm sure it'll be revisited next year. Mr. Chair, just in quick then at the state level, as I mentioned, we have the fairgrounds funding bill that'll likely be addressed again. We have the local preference I put down here as a note to start taking a look at that, what it might have a discussion with legal and figure out an avenue to at least begin that discussion. And then finally, I would just also put on the list, just for a reminder, is that rural economic incentive bill that I mentioned as part of the amendments to the economic development plan. That'll come back in some shape or form, and it might even go to the point where everybody looks at reintroducing the concept of a tax increment financing for the state of Arizona. Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation, and then the only thing I had to ask, and however you'd like to treat that, is just the action on those first 7 items.
I think we need to keep them as priorities for us, legislative priorities, and then start, like I said, focusing on a specific representative that can carry the water for us, as opposed to, basically dumping in all of them and hoping that, somehow we get momentum. It may be wiser to see who can sponsor the bill and who can co-sponsor the bill and move it forward. I looked at your, at the list here of the the state house, and I see that, for example, Land Ag and Rural, Tim Dunn is the chair, and the vice chair is Joel John, who just happens to be the other representative from this area. So that, in a state situation, that is nice, because we do have the vice chair and the chair are both from Yuma, or represent Yuma, different sections of Yuma, but they both represent the Yuma area, and that is nice, because that's where a lot of the Land Ag Rural stuff is going to happen, and hopefully Tim and John or Joel, will look at the issues that impact the Yuma area, and it may be nice to give them something they can take for us, some issue in agriculture or something that they can help with. And I think that.
Sure, thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah.
I didn't really mention behind the scenes exactly who's been supporting what, but because let's just take, for example, the fairgrounds relocation. Excuse me, Senator Sinema and McSally were very supportive of this, and so was Representative Gozar. So I think that's a great balance between what we can look at. And what I'll do then, I think I included them on my notes, but if I didn't already, I think I've identified the champions, but I'll do that for the board too as part of their list on this, to show at least so far who's looked like they've sponsored or taken action on those, so you get a sense of what's gone before. Because I don't really give you all the workings behind the scenes, so I'll take some notes and get those for you.
All right, anything else? Thank you, Paul. And is this the last meeting he's going to be here?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Oro Valley's gain, I said, is our last, Paul. So I don't know. Does it mean you're going to pass the ball on to Ian? Who, he's sitting here. So what is up? Who's going to be handling this?
Ian will assist temporarily while we advertise for the position to be filled.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those situations where we have him in
Is
front.
that the best we can do?
Oh, how exciting.
Well, good then. Let's
for
not
you,
talk
Paul.
about this too long, because the attorney's starting to look at us quizzically. So the next item in the agenda is events,
exciting.
calendar, and current events. And
Congratulations,
thank you,
Paul.
Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Yes, good luck.
We're going to need it. All right.
No.
Board members and county administrator will report on and may discuss events attended or to be attended on behalf of the county, may present a brief summary of current events, and may update the schedule for future board of supervisors meeting as appropriate. No legal actions will be taken. Supervisor Pancrasi, get us started.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I attended the fairground relocation meeting. I attended an MOU meeting with Arizona at Work. I attended the CSA Medium County Caucus meeting and the CSA board meeting. And it looks like I'm going to be the third vice president for CSA. So.
What do you mean it looks like it? You haven't voted yet?
No, they voted. They did it. I am the
then.
third vice president for CSA. Okay.
All right. I want a recount.
No, they did it unanimously. I didn't
Oh,
even.
well,
They
then.
didn't even
Yeah.
take it. They didn't even vote. So, by proclamation or whatever that is, huh? Acclamation. And
Oh.
what was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
I'll issue a proclamation, just.
Yeah, really, huh? I attended a PM 10 meeting. I went to an Arizona town hall. It was cross-border connecting sports and global recreations. I attended YMPO's special meeting for YMPO. I went to the Fair Board briefing with the new colonel from MCAS, Colonel Dudick, and I attended the YCAT focus group. And I went to interviews for candidates for the county's representation on PSPRS, and one more. Hold on.
Can you go back, please?
And I attended Yuma County Chamber Legislative Affairs Committee last week. So yeah, and I brought up the issue about local purchasing.
Okay, Supervisor McLeod?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I stated previously, I did go do the COVID saliva test on Saturday. It was very well organized. They did a great job. Attended a couple of Representative Dunn's COVID update meetings, web meetings. Chamber Legislative Affairs web meeting. Also attended the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's 2020 heat season recap. It was pretty interesting. And what was striking, several people had the same question I did. I sent my question in early. What weather pattern caused it? And they don't know yet. They don't have an understanding of what happened, but it was one of the hottest, and it was the driest season that we've had. I think there was, like in Yuma, there was like no precipitation after May. Had a meeting with the CSA Executive Committee for the Public Safety Personnel Retirement Systems recommendation to the governor for a new board member. Also attended a web meeting for YSIPTA, the Yuma County Transit Authority, regarding their future improvement plans. They've got some good stuff short term, and then long term, a lot of planning and redevelopment on that. Attended a meeting with Colonel Dudick at Marine Corps Air Station regarding the fair relocation to get him up to speed. He definitely wants to see some movement on that.
Yeah, he does.
Attended a teleconference with Governor Ducey and other business leaders regarding COVID-19 and their response. These companies are jumping through hoops you can't believe to, particularly like the resorts, trying to keep people safe and stay in business. It's been quite a challenge. Also attended a Zoom meeting with Mr. Brierly and Mayor Sanchez regarding wastewater testing for COVID-19 in San Luis, and also another meeting with Mayor Anaya of Somerton with the same subject, wastewater testing. Not sure where Somerton's going to fall. There was interest. Mayor Sanchez was extremely interested, so I have a feeling that San Luis will be on board with our project as well. So I commend the board for agreeing to set up that testing lab. I think it will be very, very good for our community. And that's all I got.
Supervisor Simmons?
Just a couple of meetings, had several meetings with constituents out in the foothills in East County in reference to some issues, dealing with those. Attended the Caballeros tree lighting at Friendship Park. They did a very, very good job setting that up with distancing and how they handled it. It was well attended and everybody seemed to enjoy themselves. A couple other meetings and that's about it.
Supervisor Porches?
You attended or heard on the YMPO meeting last week, and also heard the governor's address speech last week on the COVID.
All right. I have three main items. One is we need to reactivate that building group that was looking at the options and where at. I mean, I haven't heard anything. I think the more we put it off, it doesn't get any better. I just like to know what's going on and who, if I need to reappoint or we need to appoint someone else. Now that Supervisor McLeod is going to dedicate himself to fixing cars. And the other is the COVID protocol that, this is getting serious. If you just missed that 400 and some odd cases on Saturday or Sunday, 400 cases. I know that the testing, when you test a lot of people, you do get those kind of results and they accumulate, but we're not even looking, we're not even sure that that covers the Thanksgiving period or the Christmas period. And I'd like to get that group that worked on the first COVID restrictions and so forth, the protocols that we had initially about closing down and doing that. I want to make sure that they understand they may be called in to or if it's you, Susan, you may be called in, we may be called in to make a decision to do something similar. It's getting serious out there. So I don't want to, take the pressure off of that. Now, the other thing is the Quechan tribe, and you've asked me a couple of times about who we sent the money to. I always normally ask the board members, what they have in mind about where we send that money. How much is it this time, Desiree? All right. Well, I when I heard about that Angel Tree in the front, and I thought, well, the Salvation Army conducts a lot of the stuff. I mean, they have this fundraising.
The bell ringing.
Yeah, it would be good to help them out. This year may be a difficult year. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem to. So, I've always thought food insecurity is always something I looked at. So splitting it between the Salvation Army and what do we call that? The food bank, I think would be good this year. I don't know. What do you guys think? You let me know, okay? Now, we can't vote. I know. I mean, we can't make a decision. I just want to let you know that that's what I'm thinking of right now, okay? If you have any difference or you have somebody else you'd like it to go to, let me know.
Mr. Chairman, the Yuma Community Food Bank is feeding a larger number of folks than they have in the past, and my understanding are the lines are huge. So.
Yeah, well, it's one of those
Volunteers,
things.
you mean?
It's one of those things that's really happening that is, I think that we cannot ignore. It's Christmas time.
Maybe more volunteers.
Yes, they do need more volunteers.
Right, so I don't want to get into a discussion about this. I just wanted to let you know where I was. Susan?
I had one thing too.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, in response to your comment about the 197 and the options for Board of Supervisors Auditorium and other offices, the company BWS had to create a new scope of work because it's a completely different approach than what we were doing previously. So they had to get a few subcontractors. We're pushing that forward and should have a meeting with the review team, which includes Supervisor Pancrezi and the cloud, at least through the end of this year. So you would need to appoint another individual for that going forward if Supervisor Pancrezi wants to continue with that. I'll get you a more specific update later today. I attended we held the appreciation breakfast for the election workers. That was very fun and enjoyable. They have lots of stories about elections, events, and voter interaction. I attended the Parks and Recreation Committee meeting where they reviewed the Parks Master Plan, and then we'll be bringing that back to you on December 21st. I attended the Arizona Border Counties Coalition meeting November 20th by Zoom, the YSIPTA board meeting November 23rd by Zoom. We developed a presentation with Gil, myself, and Stiefel representatives for the remote presentations to investors for our pension bonds. I attended the bi-monthly city and county administrators meeting. That's always a good way of connecting and making sure that we can we cooperate on various projects that are in our mutual interest. So it's good to keep those relationships up, especially with the new Somerton city manager on board now, Barry Cabrera. And we held our monthly Zoom meeting for myself and the HR director with the Arizona at Work executive director and operations director.
Let me say this and say it clearly. Some of us had a tough time adjusting to this Zoom meeting stuff. Not you. You seem to, you're like a fish in water with this thing. I mean, every time I walk into your office, you're in a Zoom meeting for something or the other. It has become, I know, the norm to have this kind of meetings. But I have never seen anyone, yet adapt to it so well as you have, Susan, which is good. But, I mean, thank you for taking, taking the time and taking over some of those meetings that normally some of us would attend, especially that Border Counties Coalition meeting, which, I don't know, I always seem to miss nowadays. I was so used to, that face-to-face presentation, and some of us are more like that, but you have really taken over that. So thank you very much for assuming some of these responsibilities. Now, that leads me to the last item in the agenda, which is the planning for the different board committees that everybody belongs to. Those of you who are going into next year may want to, let me know at least this month, what you want to take, if you want to take the same ones or stuff. But a lot of this stuff is decided by the board, and some of it is decided by the chairman, and we don't really know what the chairman is going to be next year. So, there are some things that are going to be different from the times you guys came in the first time, because the first time you came in, we had a meeting after that, and then everybody got assigned. This one, we have to wait until the new board member gets signed in and sworn in. And that's another issue that we need to make sure that we sort of work on, the swearing-in ceremony for all the elected officials. This COVID situation is going to make us do it differently, I think. And it may be that we split it up or we have it remote. We need to work on that, okay?
Do it in the parking lot.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll just flat do it.
I just had a question for Susan, or a comment. With the legalization of recreation marijuana and the cities doing their stuff to get ready for this, I know the county's going to have to do it too. I think it would be good if we mirrored a lot of what they had as far as the consistency, because they seem to have a very good setup or plan for it. If not, maybe be a little more stricter as far as it. But I just wanted to put it out there. If we're going to do it, I think we need to be pretty consistent with the city and the county. That way, there's no questions.
Yeah, there's no difference, but I do have some opinions about that. I think people, when they move out in the county, they move out into an agriculture. Mostly, they move out into an agriculture area, which to me means we'll have different issues than the city.
Yeah.
The city will be more like permitting and business regulations. We will be looking at growing, those kind of issues which are different. It's not, I'm saying it's okay to start discussing it, but I think as a county, we deal with those kind of issues, especially when it requires seeding and planning and so forth, a little different than the city does. The city mostly doesn't deal with a lot of agricultural issues.
Right, I think it's more in terms of county facilities, is it going to be allowed or disallowed? And then policies related to our human resources, our employees.
So employees.
So we'll be working on,
internal
we've already
employees.
started working on those
No, you're
items.
talking about, not about the business side of it. You
Not
were
about
talking
the business side,
the
but so
human
much
resource
as far
side of
as.
it. Oh, okay, all right.
Because I just see problems if the city has one and then the county has another. People are going to go in thinking, well, I'm
Yeah,
following
we
these
want that to
directions.
be another benefit for the county employees to come in. They'll have a very, very loose regulation in the county, so that city employees will then be able to move into the county with not much trouble. I
Oh,
suppose
man.
that Supervisor McLeod will second that motion sometime. All right, guys, I think we're done. Everything else is just fluff. So thank you very much, and this ends the meeting for today, at least this part of it. So thank you very much.